Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today, we're diving into something that feels like it's really captured the zeitgeist, minimalism. But we want to go beyond, the surface of just decluttering and explore the profound ways this approach to life impacts our minds and our emotions.
Absolutely. It turns out it's about so much more than just a tidy home.
Right.
We're going to examine how this philosophy, which really emphasizes living with intention, prioritizing quality over quantity, and cultivating a sense of inner peace, stands in contrast to the often overwhelming nature of modern life.
Yeah, that constant stream.
Think about the constant stream of information, sheer volume of possessions we tend to accumulate. It's a lot.
And the core idea we're going to unpack, I suppose, is how deliberately reducing the non-essential, whether that's physical stuff, the constant digital noise, or even some of the emotional baggage we carry.
Yeah, that too.
Can actually create more room for what truly matters. Clarity, a sense of purpose, and, well, a deeper feeling of well-being.
It's fascinating to consider that the growing interest in minimalism isn't happening in a vacuum. It's very much a response to the pressures of the 21st century.
It makes sense.
We're constantly bombarded with information, dealing with financial stresses, and facing countless decisions every single day.
Right. It was eye-opening to learn that a significant majority of adults report experiencing chronic stress linked to these very factors. And when you think about the sheer number of advertisements we're exposed to daily, thousands upon thousands.
And it's scary.
Alongside the vast amount of things the average person owns, it's easy to understand that feeling of being completely swamped.
Completely. Minimalism, in this context, offers a genuine sense of freedom. It's about consciously choosing to step away from that feeling of being constantly overwhelmed.
A way out, almost.
Sort of. Now, this desire to simplify isn't a completely new phenomenon, of course.
That's a great point. It's interesting to look at some of the historical roots that inform minimalism. This isn't just a, trendy idea that popped up recently.
Not at all.
You can see echoes of it in ancient philosophies, like Stoicism, which emphasized self-control and inner virtue, or Buddhism, with its teachings on detachment.
Right. And even groups like the Shakers, historically known for their simple and functional designs, contributed to this underlying idea of simplicity.
So it has deep roots.
It does. And what's particularly compelling now is the very real way that clutter affects our mental state.
Yeah.
This isn't just about how a space looks. It has tangible psychological consequences.
Absolutely. There's research out there that clearly links cluttered living environments to elevated levels of stress hormones, particularly in women.
That cortisol connection, yeah.
When you consider the constant visual stimulation and the way it competes for our attention, it's no surprise that it can hinder our focus and contribute to feelings of unease.
Yeah, we shouldn't forget about the digital realm either. Digital clutter. Those endless notifications, overflowing inboxes, the constant pull of social media also takes a toll.
Oh, definitely.
Studies have shown that excessive digital input can actually reduce our capacity for working memory quite significantly. Maybe up to 15%, some research suggests.
Wow, 15%. That's a powerful insight. It really highlights how these seemingly minor digital distractions can collectively strain our cognitive resources.
They really add up.
On the other hand, it seems that when we simplify our surroundings, we experience a positive shift.
Indeed. Research indicates that individuals in more minimalist spaces report noticeably lower stress levels, maybe around 20% lower, and a significantly greater ability to concentrate, perhaps 25% higher, compared to those in cluttered environments.
That's quite a difference.
It is. By intentionally reducing the amount of visual and sensory input, we allow our brains to process information more effectively, which in turn supports mental clarity and a sense of calm.
It's remarkable how the simple act of reducing our possessions can lead to such significant psychological benefits. It really boils down to easing that cognitive load, doesn't it?
It really does. And fostering a greater sense of being present.
Which ties into another key mental advantage.
Exactly. One key mental advantage of minimalism is how it eases what's known as decision fatigue.
Ah, yes. Decision fatigue.
Think about it. The average person makes an astonishing number of decisions every single day. Some studies suggest around 35,000.
35,000. That's incredible.
From the trivial, like what socks, to the significant, all that constant choosing can actually deplete our mental energy, leading to procrastination and poorer judgment later on.
It's like our brains have a limited reserve for making choices, and all those little decisions throughout the day just chip away at it.
That's a great analogy.
That's where minimalism can be so beneficial, isn't it? By reducing the sheer number of options we face, even in small aspects of our lives, we free up those valuable mental resources for things that truly matter.
Spot on. Consider something as straightforward as a streamlined wardrobe, a capsule wardrobe. By intentionally limiting the number of clothing items you own, you essentially eliminate that daily dilemma of figuring out what to wear. This seemingly small adjustment can have a surprisingly profound impact on your mental energy levels.
It's almost like a mental decluttering that goes beyond just our physical spaces. And on the topic of wardrobes, there's that compelling story of Mark in London who completely transformed his daily routine.
The capsule wardrobe convert.
Yeah, he adopted a wardrobe of just, 15 pieces?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting about his experience is the measurable impact it had on his productivity. He found he was wasting a considerable amount of time each morning just deciding what to put on.
That sounds familiar.
Which would often leave him feeling rushed and stressed before his workday even began. By simplifying his wardrobe, he not only saved time, but also cultivated a greater sense of calm that extended into his work.
And the results were striking. He reported something like a 30% increase in his coding efficiency.
That's significant.
You can almost picture his apartment bathed in natural light. A serene and minimalist bedroom where a select few carefully chosen garments hang neatly. It creates this atmosphere of tranquility and focus.
And that feeling of order and simplicity directly contributes to another significant mental benefit: improved focus and productivity. Minimalism actively fosters environments that are less distracting.
Less visual noise.
Exactly. Which is essential for engaging in what some call deep work and achieving meaningful results.
We've already touched on how physical clutter can divide our attention, but it's powerful to see the concrete data on this. Studies have revealed things like an 18% faster task completion rate and maybe 12% fewer errors in workspaces that embrace minimalist principles. It really highlights the impact of our surroundings on our cognitive performance.
Absolutely. By consciously removing unnecessary objects and commitments from our environment, we create the mental space needed for sustained concentration. We can engage with tasks more efficiently and with greater accuracy.
Makes total sense.
There's a great example of Aisha, a freelance writer in Cape Town, who experienced this firsthand in her home office.
Right. Her experience transforming her cluttered workspace into a more streamlined, focused area led to a remarkable boost in her writing output, around 30%, wasn't it?
That's the figure, yes.
You can easily imagine her now bright and airy office, perhaps with a clean desk overlooking a peaceful view, a space where her thoughts could flow without interruption, just focus.
And this intentionality that's at the heart of minimalism naturally leads to another key mental benefit: the cultivation of mindfulness and greater mental clarity.
Mindfulness.
By actively curating our possessions and our commitments, we are essentially practicing living more fully in the present moment.
That connection seems so vital. It's about shifting away from the constant desire for more things or being constantly pulled by distractions and instead focusing on the here and now.
Well put, and research backs this up, linking minimalist practices to significant increases, perhaps 25%, in self-reported mindfulness and overall well-being. It really underscores this connection. Consider the experience of Elena in Madrid. She felt overwhelmed by the constant influx of social media.
Relatable.
And made a conscious decision to limit her screen time, a digital detox, essentially. The result was a renewed ability to appreciate the simple pleasures.
Like what?
Oh, the taste of her morning coffee, the sound of her children playing things he'd maybe tuned out before. It brought a deeper sense of presence in her daily life.
It paints this lovely picture of her home in the evening, softly lit, devices put away, just enjoying time with her family. A powerful reminder of how minimizing digital noise creates space for genuine connection.
And inner peace, yes. Furthermore, minimalism plays a significant role in reducing anxiety by fostering a greater sense of control.
Control, okay. How so?
Well, in a world where we often feel like we're at the mercy of external factors, taking charge of our immediate environment through minimalist principles can be incredibly empowering.
Right, making active choices.
Research has shown that decluttering our physical spaces can lead to a noticeable reduction in anxiety symptoms, maybe by 15% for those with generalized anxiety. By actively deciding what to keep and what to let go of, we are essentially taking concrete steps to shape our own mental state.
Taking back some agency.
You got it. There's a compelling example of Hiroshi in Tokyo, who found that organizing his living space helped him gain control over his anxiety.
How did that work for him?
Living in a small apartment filled with unnecessary belongings, kind of mirrored the internal chaos he was experiencing. By embracing minimalism, letting go of a significant portion of his possessions, he cultivated a sense of order.
Order in the home, order in the mind.
Something like that. It helped alleviate his anxiety and create a more tranquil space for practices like daily meditation.
It's inspiring to envision his compact apartment, maybe with its clean lines and minimal furnishings, filled with a sense of calm that reflects his newfound inner peace. So we've explored the powerful ways minimalism impacts our mental well-being. Decision fatigue, focus, mindfulness, anxiety reduction. But its influence extends even further into our emotional lives, doesn't it?
It certainly does. The emotional benefits of minimalism are truly transformative. We're talking about fostering feelings of gratitude and contentment, strengthening our relationships, and building greater emotional resilience.
Let's start with gratitude. Our constant exposure to consumer culture often fuels a desire for more, which can leave us feeling perpetually unsatisfied.
The never enough cycle.
Exactly. It's interesting how minimalism offers a counterpoint to this by shifting our focus toward appreciating what we already have.
That's a critical point. Studies have highlighted a clear link between minimalist practices like owning fewer possessions and increased feelings of gratitude and overall life satisfaction, maybe a 20% jump in some cases.
Wow.
There's a touching story of Priya in Mumbai who experienced this shift in perspective.
Tell us about her.
Her journey involved moving away from striving for material success towards discovering contentment in a simpler way of life. By letting go of the pursuit of high-end possessions and embracing minimalism, she found happiness wasn't about accumulating more,
But about
appreciating the simple joys, like her morning routines, time with loved ones. You can picture her simpler home, filled with warmth and gratitude, a stark contrast to the anxieties of her previous focus on material wealth.
a real shift in values.
Absolutely. And minimalism's influence goes beyond our relationship with stuff. It also profoundly impacts our connections with others.
Oh, so, with people.
By encouraging us to be more intentional about our commitments and our time, it allows us to focus on nurturing deeper, more meaningful relationships instead of spreading ourselves too thin.
That idea of simplifying our social circles to create space for more meaningful connections really resonates. Quality over quantity again.
Right. Research suggests a link between having a more intentionally curated social life and increased satisfaction in our relationships, perhaps a 30% increase. It underscores the value of depth in our connections.
So less surface level stuff.
You could say that. There's a wonderful example of James in Sydney who realized this. By consciously reducing his involvement in numerous networking events and prioritizing quality time with his family.
He chose family over networking.
And he did. And he found it helped rebuild and strengthen his familial bonds. It shows how minimalism can help us refocus on what truly matters in our relationships.
It creates a heartwarming image of their family dinners, maybe, filled with genuine connection and laughter in a home that isn't cluttered with distractions.
Just being present with each other.
It's about being truly present, not just with ourselves, but also with the people we cherish most. And, in a world full of inevitable challenges and transitions, it seems that minimalism can also help us cultivate greater emotional resilience.
Absolutely. By encouraging a degree of detachment, not indifference, but detachment from material possessions, from holding on to grudges, from clinging to unrealistic expectations.
Letting go.
Yes. Minimalism aligns beautifully with therapeutic approaches like acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, which emphasize acceptance and living in accordance with our values. Research supports this, suggesting maybe an 18% increase in emotional resilience among individuals practicing minimalism during big life changes.
That's interesting, like bouncing back better?
In essence, yes. There's an inspiring story of Li Wei, an entrepreneur in Beijing. After a health scare, he let go of his relentless pursuit of material success.
What happened?
By shedding his former identity that was so tied to his possessions, he found a deeper sense of inner calm and resilience. It's symbolized by his small, thoughtfully curated bookstore, a place of peace and purpose.
Wow. It really underscores the idea that true wealth isn't just about what we own.
Not at all. It's in our inner resources, our ability to navigate life's inevitable ups and downs with grace. Finally, it's important to acknowledge the role minimalism can play in emotional healing.
Healing, how does that connect?
Well, the idea that releasing possessions that are tied to past pain, maybe difficult memories or relationships, can actually contribute to our emotional well-being is quite profound.
It's like physically and symbolically letting go of things that might be holding us back,
Right.
making space.
You've got it. Studies have found a correlation between decluttering sentimental items and a reduction in symptoms of distress, maybe around 12% for depression symptoms in some cases, particularly for individuals dealing with attachment-related issues.
So clearing clutter can actually help clear the mind emotionally.
It seems so. There's a moving story from Maria in São Paulo about this. She experienced a real sense of emotional release by letting go of mementos from a past relationship.
What was the outcome?
It helped create a brighter, more open living space that mirrored her own journey toward a new beginning. Clearing the space helped clear the path forward.
It's like creating physical space for emotional healing and allowing ourselves to move forward unburdened. So it's abundantly clear that the principles of minimalism have a really significant impact on both our mental and our emotional well-being.
It truly does. Minimalism offers a powerful, holistic approach to living. It addresses fundamental human needs for clarity, for connection, for resilience in a world that can often feel overwhelmingly complex.
Yeah, it feels like an antidote sometimes.
And the mental and emotional benefits we've discussed, from reduced stress and improved focus to greater gratitude and stronger relationships, really highlight its profound influence on our overall quality of life.
And it's not just one rigid style, is it? We see different expressions.
That's right, it's adaptable. Whether we find inspiration in the serene simplicity of a Japanese home, perhaps influenced by wabi-sabi and Zen, like Yumi in Kyoto,
With natural materials, mindfulness.
or the cozy functionality of Scandinavian design, that Hage concept, focusing on quality items that create warmth, like Lars in his Copenhagen apartment.
Functional and beautiful.
Or even the resourceful simplicity, often found in developing nations, where community might be prioritized over material wealth, like Amina in rural Kenya. The core tenets of living with intention and mindful curation can be embraced by anyone.
Regardless of their background or current circumstances, so maybe some practical takeaways.
Sure. It doesn't have to be extreme. You could try gradual decluttering, maybe the 90-90 rule. Have you used it in the last 90 days? Will you use it in the next? If not, maybe let it go.
Simple rule. What else?
Curating your schedule, not just your stuff. Embracing digital minimalism, turning off notifications, reflecting on your personal values, what truly matters to you.
Experimenting too, perhaps. Like a no-spend challenge or a wardrobe challenge.
Good idea. And adapting it. Minimalism looks different for everyone. For a student like Rahul in Bangalore, maybe it's just decluttering a dorm room for focus.
Right. Or for parents like Fatima in Cairo, simplifying the home and schedule to prioritize family connection.
Or even for retirees like Margaret in Chicago, downsizing and finding new purpose through simplicity. It's flexible.
And just to quickly revisit the mental health link, it seems particularly helpful for certain conditions.
Yes, the reduction in sensory overload and decision fatigue can be especially beneficial for individuals with ADHD, as Samira, a student in Toronto, found. Creating a calmer, steady space really helped her focus.
Makes sense.
And we mentioned the study showing potential reductions in anxiety and depression symptoms too. It's not a cure-all, but it can be a supportive tool.
So when you boil it all down, minimalism, as we've explored, truly is more than just a passing trend.
Much more. It's a powerful approach to living that addresses fundamental human needs for clarity, connection, and resilience in a world that often feels overwhelming.
The mental and emotional benefits reduce stress, improve focus, greater gratitude, stronger relationships. They really demonstrate its profound impact on our overall well-being.
Whether inspired by Japanese simplicity, Scandinavian function, or resourceful living elsewhere, the principles of intentionality and mindful curation can be applied by anyone, anywhere.
So ultimately, we encourage you listening to consider how even small steps towards a more minimalist approach might create more space and perhaps more peace in your own life.
Just starting small can make a big difference.
If you found this deep dive insightful, please like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more explorations into fascinating topics. Welcome to a fascinating exploration into something we all experience but rarely stop to truly consider: the way we perceive time. Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab.
It's really something, isn't it? We've all had that feeling, time just flying by when we're having fun.
We're dragging endlessly when we're bored stiff.
Exactly. And that's not just like a feeling.
Yeah.
It's a real phenomenon called time perception. It's our own subjective take on how time passes.
Right. So while the clock on the wall measures time objectively, tick-tock, our minds experience it much more fluidly.
Absolutely. It stretches, it shrinks, depending on Well, all sorts of things.
So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack the science and the psychology behind why time feels so different in various situations.
And understanding this isn't just, academically interesting. It can actually help us in our daily lives.
How so?
Well, think about it. Improving productivity, maybe boosting mental well-being, even strengthening relationships. It all connects back to managing stress better, making smarter decisions.
And maybe just savoring life a bit more.
Precisely. Appreciating those moments.
Okay, so let's start with the basics then. What is time perception, fundamentally?
Fundamentally, it's our subjective sense of time's duration and flow. And it's influenced by, a whole range of factors.
Like what?
Our mental state, definitely. Our age, the environment we're in, the specific context. It all feeds in.
And it's not like there's one single time part of the brain, is there?
No, not at all. It's much more complex. It's an interplay between different biological, neurological, and psychological processes.
Yeah.
All working together or sometimes against each other.
Okay, let's dig into the science a bit then. How does the brain actually process time?
Well, it's fascinating because several brain regions are involved. You got the cerebellum, which is key for timing motor tasks like catching a ball.
Okay.
Then there's the basal ganglia. They seem to be crucial for estimating time intervals, like how long did that red light last?
Right.
And the prefrontal cortex, that's involved in higher level stuff like decision-making and judgments about time.
So multiple areas contributing. It's definitely not just one internal clock ticking away then.
No, far from it. We actually seem to have multiple internal timers. Think about circadian rhythms. Those are our body's roughly 24-hour cycles managing sleep and wakefulness.
Our body clock.
Yeah. Then you have ultradian rhythms, which are shorter cycles, like the 90-minute sleep cycle is a classic example. And even biological pacemakers that operate on much shorter timescales, from milliseconds up to hours. So different mechanisms for different durations.
Wow. Okay. So how do these different systems translate into our experience of time passing? Are there models for that?
Yeah, there are a few key models scientists talk about. One is the pacemaker accumulator model. The idea is there's sort of a mental clock emitting pulses.
Like a metronome?
Kind of, yeah. And another part of the brain, the accumulator, counts these pulses. More pulses mean more time has passed.
Interesting. What else?
There are also oscillatory models, which link time perception more to the rhythmic patterns of brain waves. And then there are attentional models. These basically say that how much time we feel has passed depends heavily on how much attention we're actually paying to the passage of time.
That makes intuitive sense, like hitting the snooze button in the morning.
Perfect example.
Those 10 minutes feel like maybe 30 seconds.
Right, because your internal clock and your expectations are completely misaligned. You're not really attending to time. You're drifting back to sleep.
Or waiting 30 seconds for the microwave. That can feel like an age.
Because you are paying attention to it. Your focus is entirely on that short interval.
Okay, so biology, attention. What about brain chemistry? Do things like neurotransmitters play a role?
Oh, absolutely. Neurotransmitters are key chemical messengers, and they definitely influence things. Dopamine is a big one.
How so?
Well, higher levels of dopamine seem to correlate with time feeling like it's passing faster. It might speed up that internal pacemaker we talked about. Serotonin is linked to mood, and some research suggests it might be involved in making time feel slower. And norepinephrine, which affects alertness and attention, well, that naturally feeds into how we track time too.
Got it. Now, something many people feel is that time speeds up as we get older. Is there a scientific basis for that?
There definitely seems to be. There are a couple of leading theories. One has to do with metabolic rate.
Metabolism, how does that affect time?
The idea is that as we age, our metabolic rate generally slows down. Younger people might actually process more information per unit of time, making subjective time feel denser, richer, and slower.
So more stuff happening per second when you're young.
Potentially, yes. The other major factor is novelty. How many new experiences are you having?
Right. When you're a kid, everything is new.
Exactly. Every day brings new discoveries, new skills, new places. This creates lots of distinct memories, which makes time feel longer in retrospect. As we get older, life often becomes more routine.
Fewer novel experiences to mark the passage of time.
Right. So those routine periods can feel compressed when we look back. A year can feel like it just vanished.
That really resonates. That feeling of endless childhood summers versus, blinked and you missed it adult years. It's not just nostalgia then.
No, there seem to be real neurological and experiential reasons behind it. It's tied to both processing speed and the density of new memories.
And it's not just typical aging, right? Certain conditions can affect time perception too.
Yes, definitely. Conditions like ADHD are often associated with difficulties in time estimation and general time awareness. People might struggle with deadlines or judging how long tasks will take.
Okay.
Parkinson's disease involves dopamine deficiency. And since dopamine is linked to timing, that can impact time perception.
Makes sense.
And in schizophrenia, distortions in time perception are quite common, likely due to complex neurotransmitter imbalances affecting how reality and duration are processed.
So our internal biology, our development, our brain chemistry, it all plays a huge role. But what about purely psychological factors, like attention, emotions, memory?
Immensely important. Let's take attention. We touched on it, but when you're really focused on a task, absorbed in it, time can seem to fly. But if you're focused on time itself, like waiting,
It drags.
it drags. Conversely, if your attention is divided, maybe multitasking, time might feel shorter because you're not fully processing the duration. Distraction makes time seem faster.
I can definitely relate. A boring meeting feels eternal, but get me into a good book and hours vanish.
Exactly. And emotions are incredibly powerful shapers of time.
How so?
Fear and anxiety tend to make time feel slower, almost stretching it out. This might be because our brain goes into high alert, processing sensory details more intensely.
The slow motion effect in accidents.
That's the classic example, yes. Heightened alertness. But joy and excitement, they often have the opposite effect.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It really does seem to. Those moments often feel fleeting.
And you mentioned memory earlier, how it influences looking back. Can you elaborate on that?
Right. So retrospectively, how long a period feels is often related to how many new memories you formed during that time. More distinct memories equals a subjectively longer duration in hindsight.
Like the vacation example.
Perfect. The vacation paradox. The first few days feel really long because everything is novel, stimulating, memorable.
You're making lots of new memory markers.
Precisely. But by the end of the trip, things might become a bit more familiar. Maybe routine sets in slightly, and those later days might blur together more. So looking back, the whole trip might seem shorter than you expected.
That's fascinating. It's about the density of memorable moments. Okay, we touched on age. Can we explore that a bit more systematically? How does time perception typically change across the lifespan?
Sure. For children, as we said, time often feels like it moves very slowly. They're very present-focused, absorbing tons of new information. Their days feel packed, therefore long.
The endless summer.
That's the feeling. Then, during the teenage years, the perception often starts to speed up. Routines become more established, school, activities. Hormonal changes might also affect emotional processing of time.
Right, things become a bit more predictable.
Yes. And for many adults, this feeling intensifies. Repetitive work schedules, family demands. Life can feel like it's on a faster track, and there's maybe less focus on time passing moment by moment.
Until you suddenly realize another year has gone by.
Exactly. And then for seniors, it's very common to report that time feels like it's accelerating even more. This could be due to fewer novel experiences still, maybe more time spent reflecting on a long life.
It's complex.
But that contrast, say a 7-year-old summer versus a 40-year-old,
Yeah.
it really highlights how experience, density, and routine change everything.
Absolutely. It's a powerful illustration.
Okay, let's circle back to emotions. You mentioned fear slowing things down, joy speeding them up. What's happening neurologically during those intense emotional moments?
Well, the amygdala, which is like the brain's emotion processing center, gets highly activated.
And the amygdala has connections to areas involved in timing, like the basal ganglia we mentioned earlier. Intense emotional signals from the amygdala can basically modulate the activity in these timing circuits.
So strong emotion actually alters the tick rate of our internal clock, in a sense.
That's a good way to think about it. For fear, that slow motion perception isn't just a feeling. It might reflect the brain going into overdrive, capturing more data points per second, perhaps as a survival mechanism. More detail might help navigate the danger.
A hyper-focused survival response. That makes a lot of sense. What about less intense but more sustained states, like high stress versus deep relaxation?
Yeah, that's different but also impactful. Chronic stress can sometimes feel like it's making time drag. Think of waiting anxiously for test results or counting down the minutes before public speaking. It might be linked to that heightened arousal state, speeding up the internal clock, making external time seem slow by comparison.
So stress makes your internal clock race, making real time feel slower.
That's one prominent theory, yes. Conversely, deep relaxation, like during meditation or maybe listening to calming music, often leads to a state where you lose track of time altogether. It just seems to disappear.
Time awareness fades.
Exactly. The contrast is stark axe afield. Think of a soldier in combat experiencing time very differently from a monk in meditation. It really underscores how profoundly our arousal level and emotional state shape our temporal world.
It's incredible how subjective it all is. Now, we've focused mostly on individual factors. Does culture play a role too? Do different societies experience time differently?
Oh, definitely. There are significant cultural variations. You have what are sometimes called monochronic cultures. Think of places like Germany, Switzerland, the US to some extent.
What characterizes them?
They tend to view time as linear, sequential, something you schedule, save, spend. Punctuality is often highly valued, one thing at a time.
Okay. And the alternative?
Polychronic cultures, common in many parts of Latin America, the Middle East, Africa. Here, time is often seen as more fluid, flexible. People might juggle multiple things simultaneously, and schedules might be less rigid, with more emphasis on relationships and completing interactions rather than sticking to a strict timetable.
So the value placed on schedules versus relationships changes things.
Precisely. And even language might play a subtle role. Some linguistic studies suggest that how a language structures talk about the future, maybe framing it as physically near or far, could potentially influence things like saving habits or long-term planning.
Wow. That's subtle, but potentially powerful.
And think of practical examples. The almost unbelievable punctuality of Japanese public transport versus perhaps a more relaxed approach to timing in some rural communities elsewhere. It shows how cultural norms really embed a certain way of relating to time.
Fascinating differences. Okay, let's bring it back to everyday life for a moment. Can you give some common examples of when time typically feels fast versus slow for most of us?
Sure. Fast time is often associated with engaging, enjoyable activities where you might lose yourself. Watching a captivating movie, playing an absorbing video game, a great conversation with a friend.
Flow states.
Exactly. Flow states often make time seem to vanish. Slow time, on the other hand, usually crops up during periods of boredom, waiting, or discomfort.
Like sitting in traffic.
Classic example.
Huh.
Or attending a really dull lecture, waiting in line at the DMV. Any situation where you're disengaged or just waiting for it to be over.
It's amazing how a 2-hour flight can feel completely different depending on whether you have good entertainment or just stare at the seat in front of you.
Right. Distraction and engagement are huge factors in modulating that subjective experience.
Now, what about modern life and technology? Our world feels faster than ever. Is that changing our fundamental perception of time?
That's a really critical question. Our digital culture, instant messaging, next-day delivery, super short videos, it conditions us to expect speed and immediate gratification.
We're getting impatient.
Very possibly. This constant expectation of immediacy can make even brief moments of unavoidable waiting, like a slow website load, feel almost intolerable. Our baseline expectation has shifted.
And the constant stimulation.
That too. Digital media often provides frequent little bursts of dopamine, that reward chemical. This can make slower-paced offline activities, reading a book, taking a walk, even just thinking, seem comparatively dull or slow.
Real life can feel boring compared to online life.
For some, potentially yes. You might see teenagers, for example, who are constantly immersed in fast-paced social media, find activities that require sustained attention feel, as you said, painfully slow. It might indicate a kind of warping of their baseline time perception due to that digital contrast.
That's a bit concerning.
Okay.
Let's revisit memory again. We talked about novel experiences making time feel longer in retrospect. Can you expand on this memory density idea?
Sure. The core idea is that when we look back, our estimation of a period's length isn't based on the clock time, but rather on the number of distinct memories we encoded during that period.
So more memories leak a longer perceived duration looking back.
Essentially, yes. High novelty, lots of changes, learning these things create numerous unique memory markers. Our brain uses these markers to reconstruct the past, and a denser collection of markers leads to the perception of a longer duration.
And routine.
Routine periods, even if they span the same objective time, generate fewer distinct markers because things are similar day to day. So in hindsight, those periods can feel compressed, like less happened.
The classic example is the gap year of travel versus a year in a routine job, right?
Exactly. Both are 365 days. But the gap year is often packed with novelty, creating far more memory markers, making it feel subjectively much, much longer when you reflect on it later compared to the year of routine work.
Fascinating. Okay, what about altered states of consciousness? Things like drugs or deep meditation, how do they mess with time?
They can have profound effects.
Yeah.
Drug-induced states, particularly psychedelics, are famous for dramatically distorting time perception. Time might feel like it's stretching infinitely, contracting, looping, or even stopping altogether.
Wow. What about other substances?
Cannabis, for instance, is often reported to make time feel slower. This might be linked to its effects on the hippocampus, a brain area crucial for memory formation and sequencing.
And meditation?
Experienced meditators sometimes report reaching states where the sense of time completely dissolves. This could be related to reduced activity in the brain's default mode network, which is often involved in self-referential thought and mind wandering, including thinking about past and future.
So, reducing that internal chatter can make time awareness fade.
That seems to be part of it. Even general anesthesia provides a stark example. Patients often feel like no time whatsoever has passed between losing consciousness and waking up. It shows how deeply our normal conscious awareness is tied to our experience of time's passage.
It's like consciousness is the anchor for our timeline. What about sleep? We all do it, hopefully enough. How does sleep, or lack of it, affect time perception?
Sleep is crucial for regulating our sense of time. Sleep deprivation can definitely distort our judgment of time intervals. We might become worse at estimating how long things take.
Makes sense. Being tired affects judgment.
Right. It also impairs memory consolidation, which, as we've discussed, can make periods feel shorter or more fragmented when looking back. Plus, being tired often increases stress, which paradoxically might make time feel longer while you're awake and struggling through the day.
A double whammy. And dreams. Time feels weird in dreams.
Very weird. Dream time is highly condensed or expanded. You can have what feels like a long, elaborate adventure during a very short REM sleep cycle. Dreams aren't bound by real-world temporal logic.
And jet lag?
Jet lag disrupts our core circadian rhythm, our main 24-hour clock. This can definitely skew our perception of time during the day, making us feel out of sync, maybe making hours feel longer or shorter than usual. That surreal, never-ending feeling after pulling an all-nighter really shows how much the brain relies on consistent sleep cycles for proper timekeeping.
So sleep is fundamental for resetting and maintaining our internal clocks. Okay, let's connect time perception to attention span more directly. How does focus, or lack thereof, play out?
It's a strong link. As we touched on, multitasking often makes time feel shorter because attention is fragmented.
Right.
You're not deeply processing the duration of any single activity.
Right.
Deep focus on an engaging task, leading to that flow state, often makes time fly by without you noticing. But focus on a boring task makes time crawl because your attention is likely fixed on how slowly it's passing.
And focusing on the clock itself.
That's the killer. Actively watching the clock, focusing on time, almost always makes it feel slower. It's like the watched pot that never boils. Distraction is key for making time pass unnoticed.
The difference between losing yourself in a passion project for hours that feel like minutes
versus waiting 30 seconds for a slow web page, which can feel like an eternity. It's all about where your attention is directed.
Definitely experience both. Now, shifting to more difficult experiences, what happens to time perception during trauma or in conditions like PTSD?
Trauma can profoundly alter time perception. During the traumatic event itself, many people report time dilation, that slow motion effect. It's like the brain is trying to capture every detail.
As a survival mechanism again.
That's the prevailing theory.
Mm.
Afterwards, however, time perception can become fragmented. People might have trouble sequencing events, or the timeline might feel disjointed.
And with PTSD.
Flashbacks are a key feature of PTSD, and they often involve reliving the traumatic event as if it's happening in the present moment. This intensely disrupts normal temporal awareness, blurring the lines between past and present in a very distressing way.
Like being trapped in that moment.
You can feel that way, yes. Yeah. A car accident survivor recalling every shard of glass flying in slow motion, even if the crash itself was instantaneous, is a common type of recollection stemming from this altered time experience during trauma.
That sounds incredibly difficult. Okay, finally, let's think about the consequences. How does our perception of time affect our decisions and maybe even broader societal or economic issues?
It has surprisingly far-reaching implications. On an individual level, how accurately we perceive time, especially future time, influences our ability to delay gratification. People who are better at gauging future time intervals might be better at choosing larger, delayed rewards over smaller, immediate ones. This relates to future discounting.
What's that?
It's our tendency to see future rewards as less valuable, simply because they are further away in time. How much we discount the future depends, in part, on how psychologically distant that future feels. Choosing the small win now might reflect a perception that the future reward is just too far off.
So our time sense affects our planning and patience.
Absolutely. And on a societal level, think about cultural pace. Fast-paced cultures often prioritize speed, efficiency, quick results. Slower-paced cultures might prioritize quality, relationships, or sustainability over sheer speed. These are rooted in different collective perceptions and values around time.
And time poverty.
That's the subjective feeling of constantly lacking enough time, regardless of how many hours you actually work or have free. It's a major source of stress and burnout in modern life, linked to feeling overwhelmed and constantly rushed.
Even if objectively you have time, you feel like you don't.
Exactly. And consider the gig economy, where workers are often paid by the task or by the minute. This can create a hyper-awareness of time, turning every second into potential earnings or losses, which can really amplify pressure and anxiety.
Wow. It really permeates everything from individual choices to economic structures. It underlines that time isn't just a measurement.
Not at all. It's truly the fabric of our experience. Our perception of it is this incredibly dynamic and personal thing, constantly being shaped by our biology, our feelings, our memories, our focus, our culture, the technology we use, everything.
And understanding all these mechanisms hopefully gives us listeners some insight into our own experience of time, Adam.
That's the hope. You can start to notice maybe why time feels the way it does for you in different situations.
Yeah.
If it's flying by, perhaps that's a sign of deep engagement and joy, something to appreciate.
And if it's dragging,
maybe that's a cue. A cue to introduce some novelty, perhaps practice mindfulness to become more present in the moment, or maybe just acknowledge you need more rest.
So while we can't literally slow down or speed up the clock,
we can't control objective time, no.
Understanding these influences gives us more agency, maybe, more power to navigate our subjective experience of time with more intention.
Well put. It empowers you to potentially reshape how you relate to each day, each moment.
It really hammers home that time isn't just something you have. It's fundamentally how you live.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful, a real journey through the complexities of time perception. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's an endlessly fascinating topic.
If you, our listener, found this deep dive into time perception interesting, please do like this video, share it with others who might find it useful, and subscribe to this YouTube channel, the Learn English Lab, for more explorations into the fascinating world around us. Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab, and welcome to this deep dive. We've gathered a whole lot of fascinating insights today, and we're going to unpack the really key takeaways for you.
That's right.
And today, we're exploring something that feels, well, more important than ever: nature's powerful effect on our mental well-being.
It really does feel crucial right now.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the global picture, the stats on mental health are pretty concerning.
Yeah.
We're seeing photos showing depression and anxiety rates climbing quite steeply. Some analyses suggest, a 25% jump worldwide just since the pandemic started. That's impacting over 1 billion people.
Wow, over 1 billion. That's just staggering. And then you contrast that with how we live now, right?
Right.
Data suggests city dwellers spend like 90% of their time indoors.
90%. It's a huge disconnect from, the natural world we evolved alongside for millennia. And the material we've looked through makes a really strong case here. Nature isn't just, a nice view. It actually seems to be a vital tool, maybe even an antidote to some of these modern pressures we're all feeling.
An antidote. I like that.
Yeah, whether it's a big park, a forest, or even just like a small patch of green. Engaging our senses out there seems to really calm the mind, helps us reset.
Okay, let's dive in then. We're going to explore the science, how this actually works, and the psychological effects, the shifts it creates in us.
Mm-hmm. We'll also touch on, the cultural side of things, look at some real-world examples of interventions.
And importantly, also look at the challenges, right? Like accessing nature and making sure we preserve it.
Definitely. So where to start? Maybe with the fundamental science. There's this concept called biophilia.
Biophilia, that sounds like a love of life or nature.
That's pretty close. It's basically the idea that humans have this innate, deep-seated connection and affinity for the natural world. The thinking is it's kind of hardwired into us from our evolutionary past. It explains why we're often drawn to green spaces, water, that kind of thing.
So it's not just, that's pretty. It's more like a fundamental need.
That's the argument, yeah. And there's research that backs this up. One study found something quite striking.
Mm-hmm.
Just 20 minutes of contact with nature.
Just 20 minutes.
Yeah, just sitting or walking. It significantly reduced levels of cortisol.
Cortisol. That's the main stress hormone, isn't it?
It is. And they even called these short bursts nature pills. They noted other benefits too, like improved mood and better focus beyond just the stress reduction. It really shows that even brief contact can make a measurable difference.
20 minutes. That feels, well, pretty achievable for a lot of people, even on a busy day.
It does. And another piece of research used brain imaging. It found that simply looking at pictures of natural scenes.
Just looking.
Yeah, just looking. It activated the brain's reward centers. You know, the areas linked to dopamine release, that feeling of pleasure. But when people looked at urban scenes, it often triggered more activity in the amygdala.
The fear and stress center.
Exactly. So our brains really seem preset to respond positively to nature.
So it's a preference, but with a real neurochemical basis. How does this play out in, like, real-life settings?
Well, the material highlighted a really great example, the Urban Biophilia Project in Chicago.
Okay.
It's an initiative that works to connect communities, especially low-income ones, with their local green spaces. We learned about Maria, who was dealing with a lot of chronic stress. She started joining these guided walks in Garfield Park, and she reported, get this, a 30% drop in her anxiety levels.
30%? That's huge, just from park walks.
Yeah, she described it as feeling like coming home, a real sense of relief.
That's powerful. Okay, so building on that science, what about how nature affects our thinking, our cognition?
Right, that brings us to something called attention restoration theory, or RT.
RT.
The basic idea is that modern life, especially city life, demands constant directed attention. You know, focusing hard, filtering out noise, making decisions all the time. It's mentally draining.
Totally. I feel that after a long day on the computer or trying to work in a busy cafe, that mental fatigue.
Exactly that. So RT proposes that nature offers a different kind of attention. Soft fascination.
Soft fascination.
Think about watching clouds drift or leaves rustling or water flowing. It holds your attention, but effortlessly. It doesn't require that intense focus.
Ah, I see.
And this allows those directed attention circuits in your brain to rest and recover.
So nature kind of hits the cognitive reset button.
That's a great way to put it. And there's evidence. One study actually compared brain activity after people walked in nature versus an urban setting. The nature walkers showed reduced activity in a specific brain area linked to rumination to worry. You know, getting stuck in those negative thought loops.
Oh, wow. That's significant for anyone who tends to overthink or worry.
It really is. The urban walkers didn't show that same reduction. It suggests nature helps break those repetitive negative thoughts.
Fascinating.
And this applies in workplaces too. Research found office workers who had a view of green space reported higher job satisfaction, about 15% higher, and less stress.
Just having a view makes that much difference.
Apparently so. And there was this example of a tech firm in Seattle that actually encourages green breaks.
Corporate nature breaks. That sounds forward-thinking.
It seems to work. There was David, an engineer there. He started taking short, 15-minute walks in a nearby nature reserve during his day.
Yeah.
He noticed his focus improved, felt less burned out. And interestingly, his team's overall productivity actually went up by about 10% after they started doing this more regularly.
A 10% productivity boost, that's a clear win-win for everyone.
Yeah, family.
So we've got stress hormones going down, our attention getting restored. What about other physical responses? Are there more tangible physiological changes happening?
Oh, absolutely. This is where practices like Shinrin-yoku come in. You might have heard of it as forest bathing. It originated in Japan.
Forest bathing. Yeah, I've heard that term. It sounds very calming. What does the science say is actually happening in the body?
Well, studies have found some pretty significant changes. Just 1 hour of forest bathing has been shown to lower blood pressure by around 6% and heart rate by about 4%.
Wow.
And get this, the material also mentioned compounds released by trees, these things called phytoncides.
Phytoncides.
Yeah. Breathing them in might actually boost our immune system, specifically by increasing the activity of our natural killer cells, which help fight off infections and even tumors.
So the trees themselves are kind of giving us a health boost. That's incredible.
It appears that way. And looking broadly, a big meta-analysis combining results from hundreds of studies confirmed it. Nature exposure consistently lowers various stress markers: cortisol, adrenaline, heart rate variability. It all points towards physical relaxation.
And that physical relaxation must link to feeling mentally calmer, too.
Absolutely. They're deeply connected. Mental clarity, calm.
Yeah.
It often follows that physical unwinding.
Was there a specific story about forest bathing in the material?
Yes. There was Hiroshi, an accountant in Tokyo. He was under immense work stress, and his doctor actually prescribed forest bathing sessions.
A doctor prescribed it. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And after 3 months of regular sessions, his blood pressure dropped significantly, and he reported a 25% decrease in his anxiety levels. He said the whole sensory experience of the forest just helped him completely reset mentally.
That's a brilliant example. Does this connection go even deeper? Like, can nature actually change our brains over time, structurally?
Well, that's an exciting area of research, looking at neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and form new connections.
Right.
Some findings suggest that regular time in nature might increase levels of BDNF,
BDNF.
brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's a protein that's really important for learning, memory, and mood regulation. Higher BDNF levels are often linked to reduced symptoms of depression and anxiety.
So spending time in nature could potentially help our brains grow and heal, which might lessen mental health issues over time.
That's the hypothesis, yes. And there was an example that really brought this to life. The nature retreat in Australia, the Blue Mountains, specifically for trauma recovery.
Okay.
Lisa, a woman recovering from domestic violence, went on this 2-week retreat. It was focused on nature immersion, mindfulness, and afterwards, her BDNF levels went up by 20%.
20%.
And her PTSD symptoms reduced by 35%. It's a really powerful illustration of how nature can support resilience and healing on a deep level.
Okay, the science is definitely compelling. Let's shift a bit more into the psychological effects. How does all this translate into how we actually feel day to day?
Well, it fundamentally comes back to that shift, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Moving the body out of that high alert fight or flight state and into the calmer rest and digest mode. Natural settings seem to really help facilitate that shift.
Yeah.
Research consistently shows that having green space nearby can cut stress levels, maybe 10-15%, especially for city dwellers.
That makes intuitive sense.
Yeah.
Just leaving the concrete jungle behind often feels like you can finally breathe properly.
It does. And this stress relief seems to lead to better emotional regulation, too. One study found that people spending just 2 hours a week in nature reported feeling more emotionally stable, fewer big mood swings.
2 hours a week? That's not a huge amount.
No, it's quite achievable. And part of it might be the sensory richness of nature. The sounds, the smells, the textures. It naturally pulls you into the present moment.
Right. It helps with mindfulness.
Exactly. It cuts through that constant mental chatter, the rumination.
It helps quiet the internal noise.
That's a good way to put it. Sarah's story was a great example of this. She's a marketing exec in New York City, was struggling with chronic anxiety. She started taking just 20-minute walks in Central Park every day. And she saw a huge drop, 40% in her anxiety symptoms.
40% from daily park walks.
Yeah. And now she intentionally uses that time for mindfulness, really focusing on the trees, the birds, the feel of the air.
So it's not just being in nature, but being present while you're there. What about lifting mood more generally, maybe combating feelings of depression?
Yeah, there's a strong link there too. Nature exposure seems to boost mood, partly by influencing neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine.
The feel-good chemicals.
Right. And a large study found that living within, say, a kilometer of green space was associated with a 20% lower likelihood of experiencing depression. Plus, just being outside often means more sunlight exposure.
Which helps with vitamin D and serotonin too.
Exactly. And there's another interesting angle, the concept of awe.
Awe, like seeing something amazing.
Precisely. Experiencing awe in nature, watching a stunning sunset, standing by the ocean, looking up at giant trees, has been found to reduce symptoms of depression by around 15%.
How does awe do that?
It seems to shift your focus away from yourself, away from those inward-looking, often negative thoughts. It gives you a sense of perspective, connects you to something bigger than your own problems.
That broader perspective. Yeah, I can see that. Michael's story really seemed to capture that.
It really did. He's a veteran who is dealing with PTSD and depression. He went on a wilderness therapy program out in the Rocky Mountains.
Right.
And he talked about moments like watching a meteor shower, just the vastness of it all. It gave him that sense of awe, and with it, a feeling of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. His depression scores dropped by 30% over the program. He really felt awe was key to his healing.
That's incredible. Does nature also sharpen our thinking, like creativity or focus?
Yes, the research points that way too. Improvements in cognitive function. Studies with kids show that just an hour a week in green spaces boosted working memory and attention spans by about 10%.
Wow, for kids especially, that's significant.
And for adults, nature seems to enhance divergent thinking.
Divergent thinking, that's like creativity, coming up with new ideas.
Exactly. Brainstorming outside, for example, seems to lead to more original ideas compared to doing it indoors.
Huh. That's really useful for anyone in a creative field or anyone who just feels stuck.
Definitely. Emma's story illustrated this well. She's a graphic designer in London, hit a major creative block.
Uh-oh.
So she started going to Regent's Park just to sketch. Being in that natural environment sparked new ideas, helped her break through the block. Her resulting project got praised for its originality, and now she makes a habit of working outdoors sometimes.
That's a great practical tip. And you mentioned earlier that practicing mindfulness is even more effective in nature.
Yes. The material suggested that doing mindfulness exercises in a natural setting can lead to about 20% greater stress reduction compared to doing the same practices indoors or in an urban environment.
Why is that?
It seems the natural world provides these gentle, inherent anchors for your attention. The sound of wind, the feeling of sun, the smell of damp earth. It makes it easier to stay present and deepen the practice, perhaps.
Like Aisha's experience, the teacher in Mumbai.
Exactly. She was dealing with burnout, joined a meditation group that met in a botanical garden. She found meditating amongst the plants made it much easier to focus, quiet her mind. Her burnout scores dropped by 25%. The setting really amplified the benefits for her.
So the science is strong, the psychological benefits are clear. Let's zoom out a bit. What about the broader cultural and social dimensions?
Yeah, that's important too. Nature plays a huge role in healing traditions across many cultures worldwide. Think about indigenous communities, where the land is often seen as integral to health and well-being, woven into ceremonies and traditional medicine, or traditions like Japanese Shinto, which has this deep reverence for natural elements, fostering a sense of calm and connection through nature.
And there was that example from Australia, Aboriginal bush medicine.
Yes. Tarani, an Aboriginal woman, shared her experience at a healing camp. She talked about how connecting with traditional plants and spending time by a river helped her process grief after losing a family member. For her, the river symbolized washing away sorrow, a really powerful, culturally embedded connection between land and healing.
Nature as a space for cultural continuity and collective healing.
And it fosters community more generally, too. Research suggests that doing group activities in nature, things like community gardening or group hikes, can increase people's feelings of belonging by about 15%.
That sense of connection is so important, especially now with concerns about loneliness.
Absolutely. It directly counters that isolation. Jane's story from the UK really highlighted this.
She was the teacher in Bristol.
That's right. Struggling with burnout, she joined a local community garden. Working the land alongside her neighbors gave her a new sense of purpose, strong social connections, and her depression symptoms decreased by 20%. The garden became this vital social hub for her. It shows how nature can support both individual and community well-being.
That leads to a really critical point, though. Access. Not everyone has easy access to these kinds of green spaces, especially in cities.
You're absolutely right. That discussion around urban green spaces and mental health equity is crucial. We know that having access to parks, say within 500 meters of your home, is linked to higher life satisfaction, less anxiety. Cities like Copenhagen, famous for their green corridors, really show any benefits when nature is integrated into the urban fabric.
But the reality is often quite different, isn't it?
It is. Studies, particularly in the U.S., show stark disparities. Neighborhoods with higher proportions of minority residents often have significantly less green space per person, sometimes 30% less or even more.
30% less. That's a huge difference.
It is, and it clearly exacerbates existing mental health inequalities. So initiatives like the Detroit Tree Equity Partnership, which focuses on planting trees in underserved neighborhoods, are incredibly important. They're trying to bridge that gap.
So it's not just about individuals choosing to go outside, it's about systemic issues. It's about urban planning and ensuring equitable access for everyone. Lars in Copenhagen, his experience showed what's possible.
Exactly. He mentioned biking through the city's green routes daily helps him manage stress, contributes to his overall well-being. It shows the systemic benefit when that access is built in and prioritized.
Okay, let's turn now to some specific examples of how nature is being used more formally in actual therapeutic interventions.
Right. The material covered several interesting approaches. One was wilderness therapy, often used with adolescents. Programs like Outward Bound or similar models have shown pretty good results, reductions in anxiety and depression symptoms, around 25% for teens taking part.
And Ethan's story from one of those programs sounded really impactful.
It really did. He was a teenager struggling with substance abuse, low self-esteem. He found the wilderness environment, away from usual pressures, incredibly supportive, non-judgmental. It helped him interrupt his substance use patterns and find what he called an anchor for his recovery, rooted in that natural setting.
An anchor. That's a powerful image. Are doctors actually prescribing nature now?
In some places, yes. Like in Scotland, the NHS has piloted a nature prescription program. GPs can literally prescribe activities like joining a walking group, doing beach cleanups, bird watching.
That's amazing. How effective is it?
An evaluation found that 70%, really high number of participants, reported improvements in their mental health.
70%. That's huge. Fiona's story fits here, right?
Yes, Fiona. She's a nurse who was dealing with anxiety, and she received a nature prescription for regular coastal walks. She described how walking by the sea, the sound of the waves, the vastness, it had a profound calming effect and significantly reduced her anxiety. She felt the ocean helped her heal.
Just incredible. We touched on corporate wellness before, too.
Yeah, companies are definitely catching on. Some big tech firms like Google have actually designed outdoor workspaces, meeting areas. Internal surveys suggest employees using these spaces report higher job satisfaction, about 12% higher, and lower stress levels, around 10% lower.
And Priya's experience at Google showed that direct link.
Right. Priya, an engineer, found using these outdoor areas for brainstorming was great for her focus, cut down her stress. Her team even noticed their project completion rates improved when they started having some meetings outside.
It just seems like such a simple, effective strategy. Finally, what about using nature for more chronic, long-term mental health conditions?
Yeah, there's growing interest in ecotherapy approaches, things like horticultural therapy, basically, therapeutic gardening.
Gardening as therapy.
Exactly. One study found that participating in gardening programs helped reduce symptoms for people with conditions like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder by about 20%.
20%? How does that work?
It seems to provide structure, a sense of purpose, gentle physical activity, mindfulness. Mark's journey was a good example. He has bipolar disorder, and joining a gardening program really helped him.
How so?
Tending the plants provided routine focus. It helped stabilize his moods. He reported a 25% decrease in mood swings, and now he's using those skills to help others in the program. It shows the potential for recovery, empowerment through connecting with nature.
This all sounds incredibly positive, but surely there are hurdles, challenges to using nature effectively as a widespread mental health tool.
Oh, definitely. And the material was quite clear about these obstacles. Access and equity, as we touched on, are huge.
Right, the disparities.
Yeah, the fact that low-income communities, and often communities of color, have significantly less access to safe, high-quality green space, sometimes 40% less in some areas. This just widens existing mental health gaps. Maria benefited from that new park in Chicago, but her story highlights that access often requires specific, targeted efforts. It's not just there for everyone.
So we can't just tell people go outside more if there's nowhere safe or pleasant for them to go. We need to actively create and maintain those spaces equitably.
Exactly right. Then there's environmental sustainability. As more people recognize the benefits and flock to natural areas, there's a real risk of over-tourism damaging those very ecosystems.
Like loving nature to death.
Sort of, yeah. We need to find ways to engage respectfully, sustainably, so these places remain healthy for wildlife and for future generations seeking solace there. We need to be stewards.
Good point. Stewards, not just consumers. What else?
Digital distractions are a big one in the modern world.
Ah, the smartphone in the forest.
Precisely. Being physically in nature but mentally glued to a screen can really diminish those restorative benefits we talked about. One study found people reported feeling 20% more relaxed after a device-free nature visit compared to one where they used their phones.
So we need to consciously disconnect to properly reconnect.
It seems so. Tom's experience at a device-free retreat really drove that home for him. Putting the phone away allowed him to fully immerse and get much more out of it.
Makes sense.
And finally, there's the really big overarching threat: climate change and nature loss itself. Deforestation, pollution, urban sprawl. We're losing natural spaces at an alarming rate globally.
Which directly threatens our future access to all these benefits we've been discussing.
Exactly. So advocating for conservation, for climate action, for protecting biodiversity, it's not separate from protecting human mental health. They're intrinsically linked.
That's a sobering but crucial point. So, considering the science, the stories, and also these challenges, what practical takeaways did the material offer? How can people realistically integrate more nature into their daily lives?
Well, several actionable things came up. Taking short, frequent nature breaks, even just 10 or 20 minutes during the workday or lunch break, was shown to help reduce stress.
Okay, small bites?
Yeah. Engaging in gardening is another one, even if it's just a few pots on a balcony or joining a community garden like Jane did. That hands-on connection seems really beneficial.
And hobbies.
Right. Pursuing nature-based hobbies could be bird watching, nature photography, sketching outdoors like Emma, hiking. These deepen the connection and provide enjoyment.
What about people with very limited access, maybe mobility issues or living in a concrete jungle?
Even virtual nature experiences, high-quality nature documentaries, soundscapes, virtual reality nature scenes. While not a full substitute, they can offer some partial benefits, some temporary stress relief.
That's good to know.
And advocating for change, pushing for more green spaces in communities, integrating nature into workplaces or schools. That creates opportunities for everyone.
And that point about mindfulness again.
Yes, consciously practicing mindfulness while in nature seems key. Really tuning into your senses, what you see, hear, smell, feel. That appears to amplify the positive effects compared to just passively being there.
So wrapping this all up, this deep dive really underscores a profound, scientifically backed connection between nature and our mental health.
It really does. It's clear that nature isn't just a nice to have. It's a versatile, often accessible, and powerful tool for improving well-being across the board, from cutting stress and boosting mood to sparking creativity and even building stronger communities.
And the stories we discussed, Sarah, in Central Park, Michael finding hope in the mountains, Jane connecting in her garden, Fiona healing by the sea, they aren't just anecdotes, are they? They vividly illustrate the research in action, showing the real human impact.
Absolutely. And yes, there are real challenges. Access, sustainability, our digital habits, the larger environmental threats.
They're not insurmountable.
No, they require conscious choices, individual effort, and collective action, advocacy for change.
It feels like reconnecting with nature is becoming less of a lifestyle choice and more, well, almost an essential part of staying mentally healthy in this complex modern world.
I think that's right. It feels increasingly vital.
So that leaves us and you with a thought to mull over. Given everything we've explored, the proven benefits, the modern pressures, the environmental context, how can you personally make connecting with nature a bigger priority in your life? And perhaps what collective steps do we need to take to ensure that everyone, no matter where they live, can access the healing power of the natural world?
We really hope this deep dive is giving you some valuable insights and food for thought.
Yes, we hope so too. If you found this discussion helpful and interesting, please do give us a like, share it with others who might benefit, and be sure to subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel for more deep dives like this one. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today, we're diving deep into something that, well, it shapes pretty much every moment of your life. We're talking about the psychology behind all those choices you make every single day.
From the really small stuff, like, what you grab for breakfast, right up to those huge life decisions, there's this whole hidden world influencing what you do next.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because we often think, oh, I'm making a rational choice here.
We do. We like to think we're in complete control, very logical, but the science really paints a richer picture. It's much more complex. So this deep dive, it's about pulling back that curtain, looking at the hidden forces, biases, emotions, social cues, even your environment. They all guide your decisions.
Okay, let's get into it. Our mission here is to really understand what's happening under the surface. We want to draw on these insights so you can see your own decision-making more clearly.
Absolutely. Because if you understand these influences better, you can be more intentional. Make choices that really matter to you.
So where do we start this exploration?
Let's start with the brain itself, that incredible machine in your head. Psychologists, well, they often talk about decision-making using a model with two systems. Daniel Kahneman famously explored this.
Ah, right, I've heard of this. The fast system and the slow system.
That's the one. System one is the fast one. Think of it as your brain's autopilot.
Autopilot, okay.
It's super quick, works automatically, relies on intuition and these mental shortcuts, we call them heuristics. System one is what lets you instantly know a friend's face or, swerve the car without conscious thought. It handles routine things very efficiently, saves mental energy.
Right, gets the job done quickly. So system two. That must be the deliberate one, the manual control.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. System 2 is slower. It's analytical. It takes conscious effort. This is the system you use when you're really thinking, hard tackling a math problem, comparing mortgage rates, weighing different job offers. It needs focus. It takes energy.
So it sounds like System 1 is doing most of the legwork day to day.
It is. It frees up System 2 for the bigger, more complex stuff. That's the evolutionary advantage, really. System 1 is efficient.
But there's a catch.
There is. Because it's fast and uses shortcuts, System 1 is, well, it's more prone to errors. It can fall into traps, these cognitive biases.
Errors from the shortcuts. Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, a common one is the availability heuristic. System 1 estimates how likely something is based on how easily an example comes to mind. So if you see a lot of news coverage about something dramatic, maybe a plane crash,
Right.
System 1 makes that event feel much more common than it actually is, statistically speaking. Flying might suddenly feel really risky because those vivid images are so readily available in your mind.
So what pops into your head easily isn't always the most accurate picture of reality.
Precisely. Or take your morning coffee, you reach for the same mug, same blend, don't even think about it.
Yeah, pure autopilot.
That's System 1 efficiency. But maybe one day you pause, you think, should I try that new pour-over method? Or is this fancy coffee really worth it every day?
Okay, I see.
That's System 2 kicking in. You're consciously overriding the automatic habit, analyzing. This back and forth happens all the time, often totally unnoticed.
Understood. So the brain's shortcuts are useful, but they can lead us astray sometimes. Which brings us neatly to those cognitive biases you mentioned. Systematic thinking errors.
That's right. They're predictable patterns where our thinking deviates from pure logic. Consistent ways our minds mess up, you could say. And they really sway our choices.
Confirmation bias must be a big one, especially now. That's where you kind of seek out stuff that confirms what you already think.
Spot on. With so much information flying around, our System 1 just naturally looks for things that fit our existing beliefs. It's easier. So when you're researching something online, maybe a product, maybe a political issue, you'll unconsciously click on links or read reviews that support your initial leaning.
You don't even realize you're doing it half the time.
Not usually, no. Yeah. But it just reinforces your perspective, makes it harder to see other viewpoints. It's like selective vision.
Okay, what's another powerful one?
The anchoring effect. This one's fascinating. The very first piece of information you get, especially if it's a number, acts like an anchor.
An anchor.
Yeah, it heavily influences any later judgments or decisions, even if that first number isn't all that relevant.
How does that work in practice, like in shopping?
Oh, definitely. Imagine seeing a shirt priced at, say, $500. Your first thought is probably, wow, that's way too much.
Right.
But then right next to it, there's a similar shirt for $100. Suddenly, compared to that $500 anchor, the $100 seems reasonable, maybe even a bargain.
Even if objectively, maybe it's only worth $50.
Exactly. Retailers are masters at this. They'll show a high original price next to the sale price. That high anchor makes the discount seem much bigger and more attractive.
Sneaky. Okay, what about loss aversion? Sounds like we hate losing things.
We really, really do. Psychologically, the pain of a loss feels much stronger than the pleasure of an equivalent gain. It's a powerful motivator. It's often why people stick with things that aren't great. Maybe a phone plan they don't love or holding on to stocks that are dropping. The thought of losing something by switching or selling feels worse than the potential gain from making a change.
I can definitely relate to that hesitation, even if something new might be better. What about having too many options? Sometimes that feels paralyzing.
It absolutely can be. That's choice overload. It sounds counterintuitive, like more choice should be good, right?
Yeah, it seems logical.
But studies show that if you give people too many options, they often just freeze. There's that famous jam experiment.
Oh, the jam with the different numbers of flavors.
That's the one. People are actually less likely to buy jam when faced with 24 varieties compared to when they only saw 6. Too many choices just overwhelm System 2. The effort of comparing them all becomes too much, and sometimes people just give up. Choose nothing.
Like scrolling endlessly through Netflix and then just watching nothing.
Precisely. Or staring at a huge menu and ordering the same thing you always get. Smart retailers know this, by the way. They use anchoring, yes, but they also carefully filter and categorize options online to reduce that feeling of overload. Makes it easier for you to click buy.
Just being aware of these biases seems like the first step, to pause and ask, wait, am I choosing this because it's good or because of how it's presented?
That awareness is crucial. Okay, so we've got the brain systems, we've got the biases, but decisions aren't just about cold logic, are they? Emotions must play a huge role.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes it feels like they're the only thing playing a role.
They're definitely major players, often more than we admit. There's something called the affect heuristic. Basically, your feelings about something heavily influence your decisions related to it.
How does that work? Like if I'm in a good mood?
Yeah. So imagine you get an email about a potential new project. If you read it when you're feeling really upbeat and positive, maybe after some good news, you're likely to view that project more favorably.
Compared to reading the exact same email when I'm stressed or grumpy.
Exactly. Your emotional state colors your judgment. It acts like a quick filter.
So good moods might make you more adventurous. Bad moods more cautious.
Generally, yes. Feeling happy or excited might make you more open to taking a risk, like impulse buying those concert tickets. Negative emotions like fear or sadness can make you overly cautious, maybe pass up a good opportunity. Or they can lead to choices aimed purely at feeling better right now, like reaching for comfort food after a bad day.
Makes sense. What about that gut feeling people always talk about? Is that just emotion?
It's closely related. There's fascinating work by neuroscientist Antonio Damasio on what he calls the somatic marker hypothesis.
Somatic markers. Okay.
It suggests these gut feelings aren't random. They're basically your brain's quick summary of past experiences and the emotions tied to them. Your body creates these subtle physical sensations, somatic markers that guide you, especially when things are complex and logic alone isn't enough.
So that impulse purchase again. Yeah. You see the shiny thing, you feel that rush of excitement.
That excitement. That's a somatic marker, signaling a potential reward. Your gut says, yes, go for it. It's a rapid System 1 thing.
Yeah.
But recognizing that feeling as an emotional trigger is powerful.
Yeah.
It gives you that crucial moment to maybe engage System 2, to pause, take a breath, and ask, do I really need this? Does it fit my budget? Before the automatic response takes over completely.
It's like there's this constant internal negotiation happening.
Pretty much. And just when you think it's complicated enough with your own brain and emotions, then you add other people into the mix.
Ah, yes. Social influences. We don't make decisions in a vacuum, do we?
Not at all. We're social creatures through and through. And how others act profoundly shapes our choices. One big one is social proof.
Is that like following the crowd, seeing what others are doing?
Basically, yes. Especially when we're uncertain. If you see a restaurant packed with people, you assume it must be good, right?
Yeah, or if a product has thousands of 5-star reviews online.
Exactly. That popularity acts as proof. Whether it's a bestseller list, a trending hashtag, or just seeing your neighbors doing something, we look to others for cues on how to behave.
And that ties into conformity too, doesn't it? Wanting to fit in.
It does. Conformity is more about actively adjusting your behavior or choices to align with a group's norms or expectations. You want to belong, or at least not stick out negatively.
Like choosing an outfit for a party based on what you think everyone else will be wearing.
Perfect example. Or maybe adopting certain opinions because your friends hold them, then there's authority.
Trusting the experts.
Oh.
Or people who seem like experts.
Correct. We tend to give more weight to recommendations or decisions endorsed by people we see as having authority or expertise. Think doctor-recommended labels, celebrity endorsements, or even just taking the waiter's suggestion at a restaurant because they seem knowledgeable.
You really see all three when you go out to eat, don't you?
You do. You might check online reviews first. That's social proof. Then maybe pick a place your friends always rave about conformity. And finally, order the dish the waiter strongly recommends authority.
It's all happening at once.
It's a great little microcosm of how these social forces weave together. But it's not just people influencing us. The physical environment does too, in subtle ways.
Like you mentioned earlier, the layout of a store.
Exactly. This brings us to nudge theory, popularized by Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein. Nudges are these small changes in the choice architecture, basically. How options are presented that can steer your decisions without actually forbidding anything.
Okay, like default options. That sounds like a nudge.
It's a classic and incredibly powerful. We tend to just stick with whatever the default setting is. Think about organ donation.
Right.
In countries where being a donor is the default when you get your license, meaning you have to actively opt out, donation rates are massively higher than in places where you have to actively opt in. The default creates the path of least resistance.
That's huge. What about framing?
Yeah.
How you word things.
Also crucial. How information is framed dramatically changes how we perceive it. You're much more likely to buy ground beef labeled 90% lean than beef labeled 10% fat.
Even though it's the exact same product.
Identical information, totally different psychological impact. The positive frame just sounds better, feels healthier.
And priming. What's that about?
Priming is subtle. It's when being exposed to something, a word, an image, a smell, influences your response to something else later on, often without you even realizing it. Maybe seeing an ad for a fitness tracker subtly makes you more likely to take the stairs instead of the elevator later. Retailers use this all the time. Music, scents, displays, to prime you for certain moods or purchase types.
The grocery store example really hits home here. It feels like one giant nudge experiment.
It really is a masterclass. Products placed at eye level get more attention. Those end-of-aisle displays prime impulse buys. Sale signs create urgency. It's all designed to guide your choices, often tapping straight into that fast, automatic system one.
So being mindful of those nudges helps you stick to your shopping list.
It helps you recognize when you're being gently pushed and allows you to make a more conscious choice. Okay, so we've covered a lot of decision points. But what about the things we do without deciding at all? Our habits.
Ah, yeah. So much of the day is just routine.
Exactly. Many, perhaps most, of our daily decisions aren't active choices, they're habits. As Charles Duhigg explained so well, habits are automatic loops. A cue triggers a routine, which leads to a reward. Brushing your teeth, the route you drive to work, how you react when your phone buzzes. Often these are just habits running on autopilot.
And that's efficient, right? Frees up brain power.
It absolutely does. System 1 handles the habit, freeing up System 2. But just like biases, habits aren't always helpful.
Like habitually grabbing a sugary snack when you feel stressed.
Perfect example. That might be an automatic routine triggered by the cue of stress, delivering the reward of temporary comfort, but it wasn't really a conscious decision aligned with your health goals.
So if you want to change a bad habit, how do you do it? You can't just stop usually.
It's tough. The key is understanding that loop. Cue, routine, reward. You need to first identify all three parts. What's the cue? E.g., feeling bored mid-afternoon. What's the routine? E.g., scrolling social media. What's the real reward you're seeking? E.g., mental distraction, connection.
Why?
Then you keep the cue and the reward, but you consciously substitute a new routine. So when the cue hits, boredom, instead of the old routine, scrolling, you insert a new one, maybe stand up and stretch for 2 minutes. That ideally delivers a similar reward, mental break.
Replacing the middle part.
Exactly. It takes conscious effort. At first, you're using System 2 to override System 1, but with repetition, the new routine can become the new automatic habit. You essentially rewire the loop.
That whole process sounds like it requires a lot of self-awareness, bringing the unconscious into the light.
That's really the core of it all. Awareness is the foundation. Understanding your brain systems, knowing the common biases, tuning into your emotions, seeing social pressures, recognizing nudges, understanding your habits. It all empowers you.
It puts you back in the driver's seat, so to speak.
Exactly. You're in a much stronger position to make choices that genuinely reflect what you want and value.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what are some practical strategies, things listeners can actually do to make better decisions?
Great question. First, for anything important, deliberately pause and reflect. Force yourself out of System 1. Give System 2 a chance. Actually writing down pros and cons, options, consequences, it really helps.
Don't just react, analyze. Got it.
Second, actively challenge your biases. Ask yourself tough questions. Am I falling for confirmation bias here? Is that initial price anchoring my judgment? Be willing to question your own thinking.
Requires a bit of mental discipline.
It does. Third, try to manage your emotions when facing big choices. If you're feeling super stressed, angry, or even overly excited, maybe hit pause. Wait until you feel calmer and have more perspective before committing.
Step away from the heat of the moment. Makes sense.
Fourth, simplify choices when possible. If you're facing a million options, actively narrow them down first. Don't try to evaluate everything at once. Avoid that choice overload paralysis.
Limit the jam selection.
Right. Fifth, use nudges for good. Set up your own environment to support the choices you want to make. Keep healthy snacks visible and junk food hidden. Put your workout clothes out the night before. Use reminders. Make the good choice the easy choice.
Be your own choice architect.
You got it. And finally, number 6, seek diverse perspectives, especially for big decisions. Talk to people outside your usual bubble, people who think differently. It's a great way to counteract social proof and conformity and uncover potential blind spots.
Get outside your echo chamber.
Precisely. It just gives you a richer, broader view before you decide.
Wow. It really is amazing when you break it down. So many layers influencing every little thing we do.
It's incredibly complex, isn't it? This constant interplay between logic and shortcuts, feelings, other people, our surroundings. It's what makes us human.
And just knowing about it, having this awareness, feels like it gives you, well, more agency, more control.
It absolutely does. Understanding these hidden forces empowers you to move from just reacting to actually choosing more consciously.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. The next time you're about to make a choice, any choice, just pause for a second. Ask yourself, what's really driving this?
Is it that quick gut feeling? Is it what everyone else is doing? Is it how the options are framed? Shining that little light of awareness is the first step.
It lets you take the reins of your choices and ultimately your life. We really hope this deep dive gave you some useful things to think about. If you found it helpful, we'd love it if you could give this video a like, maybe share it with someone else you think would find it interesting.
And of course, subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel. We'll be back with more deep dives into fascinating topics just like this one. Hello. Welcome to the Learn English Lab. We are here for a deep dive today, and we're getting into something, well, deeply human, I think. It's our drive to change, to improve, reach those goals we set.
Absolutely. We all have these visions, right? Learn that skill, get healthier, finally start that big project. The intention's always there.
Oh, yeah, strong intentions. But making those changes actually stick, that feels like where so many of us just hit a wall.
It really is a common struggle. We tend to rely on bursts of motivation or maybe sheer willpower, but honestly, those are pretty unreliable fuel sources.
They run out quick.
They do. They might get you off the starting line, but they rarely last for the long haul, the kind needed for, real transformation.
Right. So this deep dive, it isn't about finding quick fixes or those temporary motivation spikes. We're working from some really insightful material that's been provided, a kind of comprehensive blueprint, actually, for understanding the science, the psychology behind building habits that last.
Habits really are the engine for change, aren't they?
Yeah.
And the material gives us a clear framework. It takes us from the basic science all the way through to practical step-by-step strategies. It really shows how we can get more intentional about shaping what we do every day.
So our mission here is to pull out the most powerful insights from this blueprint. We want to give you the tools straight from this material to become, well, the architect of your own daily actions and, by extension, your future self.
Makes sense. Let's start at the bottom with the foundation.
Okay.
Where do we begin?
Well, the foundation really starts with understanding the science. What is a habit, scientifically speaking? You can think of your brain as a super efficient machine. It's always looking for shortcuts, ways to save energy.
Okay, efficiency.
Yeah. So when you repeat an action over and over, your brain literally creates like a neural pathway. It's like forging a trail in a forest. The more you use it, the clearer and easier it gets.
Until you can walk it without really thinking.
Exactly. That automatic path is the habit. Your brain's automating things to save energy. Right, okay. And this leads us to the core model for understanding this whole process, the habit loop. It's a framework that's been really influential, and the material breaks it down nicely. It shows how any habit, good or bad, follows this kind of four-stage cycle.
It does, and that cycle always kicks off with
the cue, the trigger, right? The signal that basically tells your brain, okay, run that automatic program now. Could be a time of day, a place, an emotion.
Or even something you just finished doing, or being around certain people. Loads of things can be cues.
Like the alarm clock buzzing.
Or walking into the kitchen, feeling stressed, finishing dinner. Those are all classic cues. They start the loop.
Okay, so the cue happens, and that leads straight into the craving. Now, this was a really key point in the material for me. The craving isn't usually for the action itself.
No, not usually.
It's for the feeling or the change in state that action promises. It's the motivation underneath.
That's it, exactly. You might not crave, say, getting on the exercise bike, but you crave the feeling of energy or accomplishment you get afterwards.
Or you don't crave checking your email necessarily.
Right, but you might crave the feeling of being caught up. Or maybe just relief from that little ping of anxiety about what might be waiting there.
Yeah.
Or maybe just distraction from boredom.
Okay. Cue triggers a craving for a feeling. Then comes the response. That's the actual habit, the behavior.
The thing you actually do. Lacing up your running shoes, opening the social media app, grabbing that snack, starting to write. That's the response.
And then to close the loop and tell the brain, hey, this was useful, remember this, there's the reward. The positive bit that satisfies the craving you started with.
Yeah, the payoff. The endorphin rush from exercise, the satisfaction of a clean kitchen, the momentary hit of entertainment from scrolling, the relief from stress, that reward reinforces the whole thing, strengthening that neural path between the cue and the response.
Let's walk through an example from the material, like a common bad habit. You feel bored at your desk. Maybe that's the cue. You crave some stimulation, a quick escape, the craving.
So your response is to pick up your phone, open Instagram or whatever.
And the reward, that brief hit of distraction, seeing something new, it satisfies the craving for stimulation momentarily.
And the brain learns. Feeling bored. Social media helps. Loop reinforced. Now flip it to a good habit. Cue. You get home from work. Craving. You want to de-stress, feel productive maybe.
Response. You change into workout clothes immediately and do a quick workout. Reward. You feel energized, less stressed, accomplished.
And the brain learns. Getting home, working out helps de-stress.
Understanding this loop is, well, it's where the power lies. It shows you the leverage points. You can mess with any of these 4 stages to change a habit.
That's the key, isn't it? Knowing where to push or pull.
Definitely. So maybe a good first step for you listening is to think about one habit you want to build and maybe one you want to break. Can you actually map it out? What's the cue? What's the real craving underneath? What's the response? And what's the reward you get?
Just doing that awareness can be surprisingly powerful.
Yeah, it really can. Okay, so we've got the science, the habit loop. How do we actually use that? How do we start building the good habits and dismantling the bad ones? This blueprint offers a really practical toolkit, often called the 4 laws of behavior change.
Yeah, and the core idea is wonderfully simple. For good habits, you want to make them obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
Make it easy to do the good stuff.
Right. And for bad habits, you just flip it. Make them invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying.
Okay, that gives us a clear roadmap. Let's unpack these laws one by one with the strategies the material suggests.
Sounds good. Law number 1, make it obvious. This targets the cue stage of the loop. And the big idea here is that your environment, your physical surroundings is like this invisible hand guiding your actions constantly.
We don't even notice it half the time, but it's huge.
It really is. It's shouting cues at us. So a key strategy is designing your environment on purpose. Make the cues for your good habits super visible, easy to see, impossible to miss. And the cues for bad habits, hide them. Make them invisible.
Like the example of Sarah the trainer telling people to lay out their workout clothes the night before.
Exactly. You wake up, bam, there they are. Obvious cue. Or Maria, the manager, putting a book on her bedside table instead of her phone. The book becomes the easy, obvious thing to reach for.
It's like how supermarkets put candy right at the checkout, isn't it? Making the cue unavoidable. So for bad habits, you do the reverse.
Right. Charge your phone in another room, not your bedroom. Hide the remote if you watch too much TV. Unsubscribe from those tempting email lists. There's even a strategy mentioned called the ice block method for credit cards.
Freezing it. Seriously.
Yeah. To stop impulse buys online, as massive friction makes the cue, your say's card details, way less obvious and accessible. Or to setting up like phone-free zones in your house.
Making the cue invisible in certain contexts.
Okay.
What else for making it obvious?
Another great one is habit stacking. It's quite elegant, really. You link a new habit you want to build directly onto an existing habit you already do automatically.
So the old habit becomes the cue for the new one.
Precisely. The formula is simple. After I current habit, I will new habit.
Okay.
So remember John the engineer? He wanted to meditate. His solid existing habit was making morning coffee. So his stack became, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute. The coffee making became the trigger.
Or Sarah the student. After I finish lunch, I will study my language flashcards for 10 minutes. Lunch ending, choose the study.
Yeah. Or after I brush my teeth, I will floss 1 tooth. Or after I use the restroom, I will drink a glass of water. You're weaving the new habit into the routine you already have.
Clever. And there's a third strategy.
Implementation intentions. This is about getting super specific with your plan. Not just, I'll exercise more, but I will behavior at time and location.
Like, I will do 20 push-ups at 7 a.m. in my living room.
Exactly. You pre-decide everything. The material highlights research showing that just making this specific plan dramatically increases your odds of actually doing it. It removes the should I, shouldn't I debate in the moment.
Takes the decision fatigue out of it. Like David the writer, who only got consistent when he decided, I will write for 30 minutes at 7 a.m. at my desk, not just write more.
Or I will call my sister at 7:30 p.m. on Sundays while I'm washing the dishes. Specific time, specific place, linked action.
So maybe you listening could take a second. Look around your space. What cues could you add for a good habit? What could you remove for a bad one? And is there an existing habit you could stack a new one onto?
Good prompts. Okay, moving to Law 2. Make it attractive. This one zeroes in on the craving stage. We're wired to move towards pleasure, towards things that feel good or promise satisfaction.
So we need to make the habits we want feel more appealing, or link them to things we already like.
Exactly. The main strategy here is called temptation bundling. You pair something you need to do with something you want to do.
Like rewarding yourself during the task.
Pretty much. It makes the need to thing more attractive because it comes packaged with the want to do thing. Remember Sarah, the student in the treadmill?
Yeah, she only watched Netflix while on the treadmill.
Right. So suddenly the treadmill wasn't just exercise, it was Netflix time, something she actually looked forward to. Or maybe you only listen to your favorite podcast while you're doing chores.
Or enjoy that really nice healthy smoothie only after you finish a study session. Bundling the temptation.
Another big one for attractiveness is joining a culture where your desired habit is just the normal thing to do. Social influence is incredibly powerful.
Surrounding yourself with people who are already doing what you want to do.
Yeah. Want to make running attractive? Join a running club. Find a gym buddy. The material mentioned Mark, who moved to a new city and found joining a hiking group made being active way easier and more fun. It became social. Expected.
Accountability groups, masterminds, support groups like AA, they all leverage this principle, don't they?
They absolutely do. When your tribe values and practices a habit, it becomes much more attractive to you too.
And the third strategy under attractive is about mindset.
Reframing your mindset, yes. It's about consciously shifting your focus from the difficulty or the have-to aspect of a habit to the benefits, the get-to aspect.
Instead of, oh, I have to go to the gym.
Reframe it as, I get to build strength and feel more energetic today. Or the morning advantage idea, not I have to wake up early, but I get this quiet, focused time before the day gets crazy.
It's shifting from feeling restricted, I can't spend that money, to feeling empowered. I am building financial security.
Or seeing something like public speaking not as terrifying, but as an opportunity to share something valuable. It changes the feeling, the craving associated with it.
So you might think, how could I bundle a want with a need? Is there a group I could join? How can I reframe this habit to focus on the benefits I get?
Good questions to ask.
Okay.
Law 3, make it easy. This targets the actual doing of the habit, the core idea. We naturally follow the path of least resistance. So make good habits incredibly easy to do. Reduce the friction.
Remove the obstacles between you and the action, like prepping healthy meals on Sunday so weeknight dinners are just heating things up. That mise en place chef trick.
Exactly. Keep your water bottle filled and right beside you. Lay out your vitamins with your breakfast stuff, anything that reduces the number of steps required.
And for bad habits, you do the opposite. Increase the friction, make them harder to do.
Right. Delete saved credit card details from websites. Unplug the game console and put the cords in a drawer after playing. Use app blockers that make you wait or enter a long password. Those extra steps can derail the automatic impulse.
And a really powerful tactic here is the 2-minute rule.
Oh, this one's brilliant. You scale down any new habit so that the very first step takes less than 2 minutes.
So the goal isn't the big outcome right away. It's just starting, mastering the art of showing up.
Precisely. If your goal is read more,
Yeah.
your 2-minute habit is read 1 page. If it's run 5K, it's put on my running shoes. If it's write a novel, it's write 1 sentence.
Just get over that initial hump.
Yeah. Once you've started, inertia is overcome. You've shown up, and often you'll naturally continue for longer. But the win is just starting.
Makes sense. What else makes things easy?
Automation. Taking the decision-making and willpower out of it completely where you can.
Like setting up automatic transfers to your savings account the day you get paid.
Perfect example. Or automatic bill payments. Setting up recurring investments, you leverage things like dollar cost averaging without even thinking about it each month. Using a pill organizer for the week. You set up the system once, then it runs itself.
Less effort day to day.
Much less. And closely related is priming the environment. Setting things up beforehand to make the next intended action smooth and easy.
Like laying out your gym clothes and packing your bag the night before.
Exactly. Or setting up breakfast bowls and ingredients before bed. Cleaning the kitchen right after dinner so you wake up to a clear space, which makes a calm morning routine easier. You're setting your future self up for success.
So you could do a quick friction audit. For a good habit, where can I remove steps? For a bad habit, where can I add steps? And how can I apply that 2-minute rule to just get started on something tough?
Excellent. Which brings us to the final law, Law 4. Make it satisfying. This closes the loop. The reward tells your brain, that was good, let's do it again. It reinforces the habit. And the crucial insight here, satisfaction needs to be immediate.
Right, our brains love instant gratification. Waiting weeks for results doesn't reinforce the daily action very well.
Not nearly as well. So you need to find ways to feel good about the habit right away. Instead of just saving money and seeing the balance creep up slowly, maybe you immediately transfer the 5 pounds you didn't spend on coffee into a separate fund account. You see the reward instantly.
Or focusing on the immediate fresh feeling after you floss, not just the long-term gum health.
Or the jolt of alertness after a cold shower. Or using a language app that gives you points or badges right after you complete a lesson. That immediate feedback is satisfying.
Tracking your habits is another way to get immediate satisfaction, isn't it?
Huge. Seeing that visual progress, using a habit tracker app or just putting an X on a calendar, that don't break the chain idea associated with Jerry Seinfeld.
Right.
Watching the chain grow is immediately satisfying.
You get a little dopamine hit just from checking the box, tallying pages read, seeing your meditation minutes accumulate on an app, filling up a journal. It makes progress tangible now.
You can also give yourself small but immediate guilt-free rewards. Key is guilt-free and immediate.
What kind of things?
Maybe after you hit a writing deadline, you allow yourself 10 minutes of guilt-free web browsing, cooked healthy meals all week. Maybe you treat yourself to a fancy coffee on Saturday morning or buy that new cookbook you wanted. It needs to feel like a genuine reward tied closely to the habit.
But it shouldn't undermine the habit itself, right? Like rewarding exercise with a giant cake.
Exactly.
Hey.
Needs to align. And finally, accountability partners work partly because they provide immediate social consequences, either positive or negative.
Knowing someone's waiting for you at the gym makes the reward of not letting them down or the punishment of feeling guilty very immediate.
Right. Or making a public commitment. The fear of public failure is a strong, immediate motivator. Having a coach check in provided that regular, immediate feedback loop.
So think about it. What small, immediate, guilt-free reward could you tie to your target habit? What's a super simple way you could start tracking it today?
Okay, so we have the 4 laws for getting habits started, but keeping them going long-term through boredom, challenges, life getting in the way, that requires going a bit deeper.
Right, because motivation fades, things change. The blueprint covers strategies for really mastering habits, doesn't it?
It does. And one of the most profound shifts it talks about is moving towards identity-based habits.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It means shifting your focus from the outcome you want, like lose 20 pounds, or even the process, go to the gym 3 times a week, to the person you want to become.
So it's about who you are, not just what you do.
Precisely. When your habits are aligned with your desired identity, I am a healthy person, I am a writer, I am someone who keeps their commitments, then doing the habit feels like just being yourself. It's not a struggle against who you are, it's an affirmation of it.
How do you cultivate that?
You first decide the type of person you want to be, get specific, not I want to write, but I am a writer. Then, every single time you perform the related habit, no matter how small, you see it as casting a vote for that identity.
So lacing up your running shoes, even for a short walk, is a vote for I am a runner.
Writing just one sentence is a vote for I am a writer. Getting up when the alarm goes off is a vote for I am a disciplined person. These small wins build belief in that new identity over time.
That's powerful. What else helps with long-term consistency?
The Goldilocks rule. This is about staying motivated by making sure your habits are operating at the right level of difficulty.
Not too hard, not too easy, but just right, like the porridge.
Exactly. Tasks that are slightly challenging keep us engaged. Too easy, we get bored. Too hard, we get discouraged and quit.
So you need to keep adjusting the difficulty.
Yeah, you need to escalate gradually. When you start running, you add a bit more distance or speed over time. Learning guitar, you move from simple chords to more complex songs.
But what happens when it does get easy? When you hit a plateau?
That's crucial. You have to beware the plateau. Once a habit feels automatic and maybe a bit boring, you need to introduce a new, slightly harder challenge to stay in that optimal Goldilocks zone. Add more weight, learn a new technique, try a different variation. It's like progressive overload in weightlifting. Keep it challenging, but manageable.
So you could maybe map out a rough 3-month progression for a new habit. How will you make it slightly harder each week or month?
Good idea. The material also draws a really important line between motivation and discipline.
It's the motivation trap. Feeling like you need to want to do it.
Right. Motivation is fickle. It comes and goes. Discipline is about showing up and doing the work, regardless of how you feel. Discipline is built through reliable systems, not fleeting feelings.
Professionals don't wait for motivation, do they? They have routines, systems.
Exactly. They rely on their commitment, their process. So the advice is, focus on building effective systems, not just chasing goals.
What's the difference?
A goal is the target, like running a marathon or writing a bestseller. A system is the repeatable process you follow that increases your odds of hitting the goal, like your weekly training schedule or your daily writing routine. You focus on executing the system. The goal often takes care of itself if the system is good.
So build the system, trust the system.
And build a habit of just starting. We talked about the 2-minute rule. Overcoming that initial inertia is often the biggest battle. Sometimes just counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, and launching into action for 5 minutes is enough to break through resistance.
And accept that it won't always be exciting.
Embrace the boredom. Mastery requires practice, and practice is often repetitive, sometimes tedious. Showing up consistently, even when it's not fun, is what builds discipline and leads to results.
Okay, so define the system for your most important goal. What's the daily or weekly process?
And then, inevitably, setbacks happen. You'll miss a day. Life throws curveballs.
Yeah, perfection is impossible. So how do you handle that?
The material is really clear on this. Success isn't about never stumbling. It's about how quickly you get back on track.
Okay.
The key rule is never miss twice. 1 missed workout. It happens. Get back to it the next day. 2 missed workouts in a row. That's the beginning of a new unwanted habit, making your absolute priority to avoid that second consecutive miss.
1 slip is an outlier, 2 is a pattern.
You got it. And related to this, have a plan for when things do go wrong. Use if-then planning for likely obstacles.
Like, if I have to travel for work and can't get to a gym, then I will do a 20-minute bodyweight workout in my hotel room.
Perfect. Or, if I get sick and can't focus on writing my usual 1,000 words, then I will write just 100 words to maintain the habit. Having a backup plan ready makes you much more resilient.
And forgive yourself, right? Don't beat yourself up.
Absolutely. See setbacks as data, not failures.
Yeah.
Okay, I skipped meditation. Why? What can I adjust? No big deal. Back to it tomorrow. Self-compassion is key.
Maybe do a pre-mortem. Imagine failing 6 months from now, what likely caused it. Then make an if-then plan for that specific scenario now.
That's a great proactive strategy. Finally, for long-term mastery, the blueprint stresses the need for ongoing habit audits and reviews. This isn't a set it and forget it thing.
You need to check in regularly.
Yeah, schedule a weekly habit review.
Yeah.
Just 10, 15 minutes. Look back. What went well? Where did I stick to my plan? What didn't go well? Why not? What small tweaks can I make to my system or environment for next week? Are these habits still serving the identity I want to build?
Like a freelancer reviewing their week, seeing they missed their outreach goal because of distraction, and deciding to use a website blocker next week.
Exactly. And maybe once a year, do an annual identity review. Step back. Who do I want to be in this next chapter? Are my current core habits still aligned with that vision? Do I need to add new ones or maybe let go of some old ones that no longer serve me?
So action item. Schedule that weekly review in your calendar right now. Make it real.
Definitely. Even with all this, there are still common traps people fall into.
Yeah, the material flags a few key pitfalls to watch out for, like the all or nothing trap.
Ah, yes. Thinking, I missed my workout today, so the whole week is ruined. Might as well give up.
The solution. Embrace imperfection. Remember the 2-minute rule. Consistency beats intensity. Doing something is always better than doing nothing.
Another pitfall. Ignoring the why. Losing touch with your deeper reason for building the habit in the first place.
So you need to reconnect with that purpose. Visualize the benefits, maybe write it down.
Yes. Keep the motivation anchored. Also, trying to tackle too many habits at once.
Spreading yourself too thin.
Exactly. Focus on just 1, maybe 2 or 3 keystone habits first. Get those solid before adding more.
Not planning for setbacks, we covered that, but it's a big one. Assume things will go wrong and have your recovery plan ready. Never miss twice.
Underestimating the power of the environment. Still thinking you can just willpower your way through bad surroundings.
Optimize your space. Willpower is limited, environment is persistent.
Confusing motion with action. Spending ages reading about fitness, but never actually exercising. Planning endlessly, but not starting.
Prioritize doing even small actions. Start.
And finally, lack of patience. Expect results too soon, getting discouraged when transformation doesn't happen overnight.
Remember the compound effect. Small, consistent efforts add up hugely over time. Celebrate the small wins. Trust the process. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Well said. Okay, we've journeyed through the science, the 4 laws, the mastery strategies, the pitfalls. Let's pull it all together into a clear, actionable blueprint that you can use based directly on the material.
Okay, the step-by-step plan. Step 1. Identify your keystone habits. What are the 1 to 3 habits that would have the biggest positive ripple effect in your life?
Action. List those 1-3 habits right now.
Step 2. Define your desired identity. For each of those keystone habits, write down the identity you are reinforcing. I am a person who exercises regularly. I am a lifelong learner.
Action. Write down those identity statements.
Step 3. Apply the 4 laws checklist. Go through each keystone habit. How will you make the cue obvious, the craving attractive, the response easy, the reward satisfying?
Action. Fill out this plan. What specific strategies, habit stacks, temptation bundles, 2-minute rules, trackers will you implement for each law, for each habit? Get detail.
Step 4. Plan for setbacks. For each habit, identify the most likely obstacle and create your specific if-then recovery plan.
Action. Write down those recovery plans.
Step 5. Schedule your reviews. Put your weekly habit review and your annual identity review into your calendar as recurring appointments.
Action. Block out that time right now. Treat it seriously.
And step 6. Just start and be patient. This is maybe the most critical part. Don't get stuck in planning paralysis. Pick one thing, apply the laws as best you can, and begin today.
Start small.
Right.
Stay consistent. Trust that compound effect. Those tiny improvements day after day, they seem insignificant at first, but they build exponentially. That's where the real transformation happens.
So when you boil it all down, the power to change, to really transform yourself, it doesn't come from those occasional heroic efforts, does it?
Not really. It comes from the quiet accumulation of small, consistent choices day in, day out.
Choosing to put on the shoes, choosing to read one page, choosing to prep your lunch the night before. These tiny decisions, they're the votes you cast for the person you're becoming.
And this blueprint, this material we've explored, it gives you the understanding and the practical tools to make those choices consciously, to stop being pushed around by circumstance and start being the architect of your habits and therefore your future.
So take this blueprint, activate it, embrace the process, know that there will be bumps, but keep getting back on track. The power is in starting and starting again. The transformation really does begin with that very next small choice.
We really hope this deep dive has given you some concrete tools and maybe some renewed motivation to build the habits that matter to you.
The material for this deep dive was prepared by Learn English Lab. If you found this conversation useful, we'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might benefit, and subscribe to the Learn English Lab YouTube channel for more content like this.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a close look at something absolutely fundamental to how we connect, often without us even realizing it. Body language and facial expressions.
Yeah, you could call it our nonverbal vocabulary, really.
Exactly. We've gathered some, really fascinating material to unpack just how much we're actually transmitting and receiving, not through words, but, through our bodies and faces.
And our mission here, I suppose, is to help you get a better handle on these powerful nonverbal cues.
Right, and maybe even tune into what your own body might be telling you.
So this nonverbal layer, it uses gestures, expressions. It can emphasize what we're saying, or sometimes, maybe more interestingly, completely change the meaning.
It's such a huge part of our daily communication. I mean, some sources suggest it could be, up to 80%?
It's massive. We're talking about everything, really. Facial expressions, how you move, your posture.
Eye contact, hand gestures, even your tone of voice, the volume.
Mm-hmm. And getting a grasp on this isn't just about trying to, read people in some simplistic way.
No, it's more than that.
It can genuinely improve your own communication skills, help you really understand what others might be feeling underneath it all.
And give you some pretty valuable insight into yourself, too.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this, because body language, it's incredibly powerful, often very reliable for revealing feelings.
But, and this is crucial, it's definitely not always foolproof. You have to be careful.
Right. Interpretation needs caution. Someone might be trying to manipulate their nonverbals. Think of a skilled negotiator, maybe.
Or that classic poker player. Yeah, someone who's learned to control their tells.
Exactly.
And then sometimes these signals just happen unintentionally. They leak out whether you mean them to or not.
So a single gesture, it could mean different things depending on the whole situation, right?
Absolutely. Context is everything. And speaking of context, there are some really significant factors that shape how we use and understand body language.
That seems like a key point.
It is. Cultural differences, for example, are huge. Take eye contact. In many Western cultures, looking someone in the eye shows interest, sincerity. But, in some Eastern cultures, avoiding that prolonged gaze might actually be a sign of respect.
Oh, interesting. Like deference.
Kind of, yeah. Or think about nodding. We usually think, yes, I agree.
Right.
But in some places, it just means I hear you, I'm acknowledging you're speaking, not necessarily agreement.
Wow. Okay. That really highlights the need for nuance.
It does. And it's not just culture. Developmental differences play a role, too.
How so?
Well, think about neurodiverse individuals. Someone might fidget, for instance. You might automatically think boredom or distraction.
Yeah, that's a common assumption.
But for that person, fidgeting could actually be a way to increase focus or maybe self-soothe, manage anxiety. It's not what it might look like on the surface.
Got it. So misinterpretation is easy if you don't consider these things.
Very easy. And psychological factors too, like social anxiety. Someone might struggle with eye contact, not because they're hiding something or uninterested,
but because it genuinely causes them intense discomfort.
Exactly. So being aware of these potential influences is just vital before jumping to conclusions about what a certain behavior means.
This next point is really fascinating. Apparently, our brains might actually prioritize the nonverbal signals over the verbal ones.
If you get mixed messages like someone says, I'm fine, but their face looks pained or they're tense.
Your brain likely trusts the body's story more.
That's the idea. It leans towards the nonverbal cues, which means really, to understand what's going on, you have to look at the whole picture.
The words, all the different nonverbal signals happening at once.
And the overall situation, the context, trying to just isolate one signal. That's where mistakes happen.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So with that foundation, the need for nuance and context, let's maybe zero in on the face and eyes.
Yeah.
Arguably the most expressive part.
Definitely. Facial expressions are often seen as the most universal form of body language.
Like the core emotions, joy, anger, fear.
Surprise, sadness, disgust. Yeah, those tend to be recognized pretty consistently across different cultures.
And the face can show such a huge range, can it? Happiness, sadness, anger, surprise, disgust, fear, confusion, excitement, desire, even contempt. It's like a running commentary.
It really is. And it's often true that your face kind of gives away how you truly feel, even if your words are saying something else.
Think about smiles.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between a genuine smile, the Duchenne smile, they call it, and one that's maybe less sincere.
How can you tell?
A genuine Duchenne smile doesn't just involve the mouth corners turning up. Critically, the muscles around the eyes contract. You get those little crinkles.
Smiling eyes.
Exactly. That's the smile that feels warm, approachable. An insincere smile might just be the mouth, Maybe when someone feels obligated to smile or they're uncomfortable.
Okay. And then there are micro-expressions. These sound intriguing.
They are incredibly brief, involuntary facial flashes, like maybe only lasting 125th of a second.
Whoa, that fast.
Super fast. And because they're involuntary, not consciously controlled, they can sometimes reveal an emotion someone is actively trying to hide. A quick flicker of fear or anger.
Fascinating. And the eyes themselves. Windows to the soul, as they say.
They communicate so much. Eye gaze, for starters.
Right. Direct contact usually means interest, attention.
But too much can feel a bit intense, maybe even threatening.
Yeah, you don't want to stare someone down.
No. And averting your gaze can signal different things, maybe distraction, discomfort, maybe hesitation about revealing feelings.
Looking down can sometimes seem unconfident, right? I read somewhere it might be better to look to the side if you break contact.
That's a suggestion, yeah. And just noticing where someone's eyes naturally go, they often follow what actually interests them in the environment or conversation.
What about blinking?
Blinking patterns can tell you things too. Rapid blinking might suggest stress, discomfort, anxiety, worry.
Just thinking hard.
Or working through a problem, exactly. It's often linked to emotional arousal. But, and this is important, you can't reliably link it to dishonesty. There's no simple liar's blink.
Okay, good to know. So avoid that myth.
Definitely. And on the other side, very infrequent blinking could mean someone's trying to consciously control their movements, maybe like that poker player again.
Right, maintaining that steady gaze.
Pupil size is another one, though it's subtle. Dilation, bigger pupils can suggest positive feelings, interest, attraction.
Or just general arousal of the nervous system.
Yeah, it can happen with strong emotions like anger or fear too. And contraction, smaller pupils might suggest dislike or negativity.
And there are even smaller things, right? Like the space between the eyebrows.
The glabella, yeah. It can tighten with concentration or frustration, or you might see a little nose wrinkle, a bunny nose with dislike.
And lips.
Lips pressed into a thin line can mean something's bothering someone. Or if they're really troubled or holding something back, they might even suck their lips inward.
Okay, moving down the body then. Our hands, they're always doing something, aren't they?
Incredibly active communicators.
Yeah.
Tapping fingers, for instance, often impatience, maybe nervousness.
And steepling fingers. When people touch their fingertips together.
That can be associated with authority, feeling in control, confidence.
What about open hands, palms up?
Often signals openness, like I have nothing to hide. Rubbing hands together can show excitement or anticipation.
And touching the cheek?
That often means someone's thinking, evaluating, maybe interested.
Pulling on an earlobe?
Could suggest trying to decide something, feeling a bit indecisive.
Now, you mentioned earlier that some actions get misinterpreted, especially around lying.
Yes, this is really important. Actions like rubbing your eyes, which could mean doubt, disbelief, or just being tired.
Or touching or rubbing the nose. That's the classic one people think means lying.
Right, but it's often wrongly linked. That, or covering the mouth, which can hide an emotion or disapproval, these are frequently just pacifying behaviors.
Pacifying behaviors, meaning
self-soothing actions. Things we do unconsciously when we feel stressed, uncomfortable, or uncertain to kind of calm ourselves down.
So the key takeaway here is, don't assume nose touching means lying.
Absolutely. The research is clear. These single actions are not reliable indicators of deception on their own. There's no Pinocchio effect. Relying on one cue like that is just asking for trouble.
Got it. Okay, what about arms and legs? Crossed arms is a big one.
The classic interpretation is defensive, closed off, maybe insecure.
But there's more to it.
There usually is. It can also just be a self-soothing thing, like giving yourself a hug, especially if you're feeling stressed.
Like self-comfort.
Exactly. And sometimes if someone's leaning back, looking relaxed, smiling, crossed arms in that context might actually signal confidence, feeling in control.
So context again.
Always. And arms can also be used maybe more consciously to create a bit of distance or protection.
What about crossed legs?
Well, crossing at the ankles might suggest holding something back. Crossing at the knee, especially if the top leg points away from the other person, could signal discomfort or maybe disinterest.
And that figure 4 pose. Ankle on the opposite knee.
Yeah, that one, especially if the leg is sticking out a bit, is often read as a sign of power, maybe dominance, feeling quite confident.
Whereas open arms and legs generally suggest
confidence, approachability, being open to interaction.
And all those little movements, tapping feet, jiggling legs.
Usually betray some kind of inner state, nervousness, restlessness, boredom, maybe frustration. Constant shifting from foot to foot, too.
And apparently, even the direction our feet are pointing matters.
Subtly, yes. If someone's feet are angled towards the door while they're talking to you, it might unconsciously signal they want to leave the conversation. If they're pointed towards you, they're likely engaged.
What about hands on hips?
Can be a bit ambiguous. It might mean I'm ready, I'm in control. Or it could come across as aggressive, territorial.
But if the thumbs point forward?
Some suggest that makes it more about inquisitiveness, like, okay, what's going on here?
And hands clasped behind the back.
Could be anger, apprehension, frustration, or sometimes just boredom or trying to appear calm when anxious. Again, you need the whole picture.
Posture too, right? How we hold ourselves says a lot.
A huge amount.
Yeah.
About our feelings, even perceived personality traits like confidence or maybe submissiveness.
Like sitting up straight suggests focus.
Whereas being hunched over might communicate boredom or indifference. Leaning back could signal disinterest, but leaning in
shows interest, excitement.
Definitely. Standing tall often conveys confidence, eagerness. Resting your head in one hand might mean you're thinking.
But both hands supporting your head probably means boredom or you're just tired.
Right. And tilting your head or even your whole body slightly can show interest, concentration, sometimes even attraction.
And beyond our bodies themselves, there's the space between us.
Personal space, yes. Proxemics. The distance we naturally keep sends signals about our relationship and comfort level.
Didn't someone categorize these distances?
Yes, anthropologist Edward T. Hall laid out 4 main levels. There's intimate distance, very close, like 6 to 18 inches. For hugging, whispering, very close relationships.
Okay.
Then personal distance, maybe 1.5 to 4 feet, usually for family, close friends. How close you stand within that range often reflects the intimacy.
Makes sense.
Social distance comes next, about 4 to 12 feet. This is more for acquaintances, formal interactions. You keep more distance if you don't know someone well.
And the furthest?
Public distance, 12, 25 feet, or even more. Think public speaking, addressing a large group.
And like everything else, this varies by culture, right?
Heavily. People from some Latin American or Middle Eastern cultures might stand much closer than, say, people from North America or Northern Europe generally feel comfortable with.
So stepping towards someone or backing away.
Or even putting up a hand to create a barrier. Those are clear signals about wanting more or less closeness.
So putting this all together, it really hammers home that body language is complex. You can't just look at one thing in isolation.
No, definitely not. You have to combine the verbal stuff, all the different nonverbal cues you're seeing, and the overall situation. Nonverbals alone just don't give you the full story.
There was a really compelling example of this. Something about an FBI agent.
Ah, yes, that's a great illustration. The agent wasn't looking for typical lying cues. He was assessing the whole picture, everything the person was transmitting relative to the situation.
And he spotted a potential spy based on flowers.
Believe it or not, yes. How the person carried flowers leaving a shop. They held them by the stems with the blooms pointing down.
Which is unusual.
In the US, yes. It's apparently a more common way to carry them in parts of Eastern Europe. It was a tiny, subtle detail, but it was an anomaly for that person in that context.
And that tiny clue led somewhere.
It did. It wasn't proof of anything on its own, but it prompted further investigation that eventually led to a confession about espionage, not about flowers.
Wow. So that FBI approach, it's about observing the transmission, looking for shifts from baseline behavior, noticing tiny details.
Like blink rate, how someone walks, yeah. Not relying on those popular myths like nose touching equals lying.
It really underscores that we're always sending out nonverbal signals, aren't we? Intentionally or not.
Constantly. How we groom ourselves, our clothes, our posture, those little shifts in position. It's all part of the communication stream.
So how can we, get better at noticing and understanding all this, both in others and in ourselves? Any practical tips?
Well, first off, just consciously pay attention. Start observing others' cues, but also become more aware of your own. Like, do you tend to look at the floor when you feel unsure? And notice that.
And if you see something ambiguous like clenched fists,
instead of assuming anger, maybe it's better to just ask gently, how are you feeling, if the situation allows? Don't jump to conclusions.
Consider their usual baseline behavior too, right? Changes are often more significant.
That's a really good point. A shift from someone's typical pattern can be quite telling.
And eye contact.
Aim for appropriate eye contact. It helps you pick up cues, shows you're engaged, but find that balance. Don't stare intensely.
Crucially, don't forget to actually listen to the words too.
Yes. Don't get so obsessed with decoding body language that you miss the verbal message. They work together.
And always, always remember those variables. Culture, development, psychology, they all influence things.
Absolutely. What looks like one thing might stem from something completely different.
We can also think about using our own body language more intentionally.
For sure. Things like maintaining an open posture, using appropriate eye contact, offering genuine smiles that can help convey interest, friendliness, finding balance, like with a handshake firm but not crushing.
Developing emotional intelligence seems key here too. Understanding your own feelings.
Helps you sense how others might be perceiving you and helps you notice what your own body might be telling you. Maybe that tight jaw or slumped posture is a sign of stress you hadn't fully acknowledged.
And interestingly, just standing or sitting up straight can actually boost your mood.
Research suggests it can have a positive impact on mood and self-esteem, yeah. Especially helpful when dealing with stress.
So this deep dive really shows body language is this incredibly rich, complex, constantly operating layer of communication.
Mm-hmm. It's always there, beneath the words, a continuous flow of signals.
And observing it thoughtfully, within context, combined with the verbal stuff, it can offer some really powerful insights.
Into ourselves and into others, definitely.
So here's a final thought for you to maybe mull over about your day. Knowing that we are all constantly transmitting this nonverbal information, consciously or not, how does that awareness change the way you observe the interactions happening all around you?
It certainly gives you a lot more to notice, doesn't it?
It really does. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful.
If you enjoyed this discussion, please consider liking this video, sharing it with others who might find it useful,
and subscribing to the Learn English Lab channel for more explorations like this one. Thanks for tuning in.